Good evening. We're going to call the October 19th meeting to order. Lee, can you go with the announcements, please?
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Sparta Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be advertised by having the date, time, and place thereof posted at the Sparta Board of Education office, 18 Mohawk Avenue, as designated by the Board of Education for posting of such in a public place. Written notice was emailed on September 21st, 2023 to the New Jersey Herald, the Star Ledger, tapintosparta.net, and to the Township Clerk specifying the date, time, and place of this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. We need a roll call, Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Here.
Ms. Keeling? Mr. Knapp?
Here.
Ms. McMichael?
Here.
Mr. Paleski? Ms. Pitzer?
Here.
Ms. Seelander?
Here.
Dr. Serrano? Mr. Morris?
Here. You all rise for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. USA! 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 Do we have recognition? No. So we're going to start tonight's meeting with presentations. I'm going to have Mr. Shannon Benson come up with his HIB presentation.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Benson. I am the Director of Student Support Services here in the Sparta School District. And part of my role is to serve as the anti-bullying specialist for the district. And this evening, I'll be presenting to you our HIB self-assessment report as required by the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. So before going into any data, I'll just give you a brief description as to what the HIB assessment actually is. So the HIB self-assessment is a yearly self-assessment that is conducted by our individual school anti-bullying specialists each year. It focuses on 8 different categories, and within each category, there's multiple indicators that must be scored on a scale of 0 to 3. Of course, 0 being the worst score you can get, 3 being the best score that you can get. All of those indicators, as you will see as we go through the slides, are really centered around the processes, the procedures, staffing, initiatives, and trainings that we provide to our staff within the district as it pertains to HIBs. The categories and indicators are all designed to really help strengthen and prevention and intervention of HIBs while also improving culture and climate. So once all the indicators and categories have been scored, which is where we are currently as a district, it is submitted to the New Jersey Department of Education, at which time the New Jersey Department of Education will provide us with a preliminary report card, which is what you will see in the next slide. Once we receive that preliminary report card, it is my responsibility to then present it to the Board of Education with the hope of getting it approved. Once that preliminary report card is approved, it is then once again submitted to the New Jersey Department of Education with the hope of receiving our official report. That official report usually takes a few months before we receive it, but as it pertains to the law, once we do receive that report, it will be once again submitted to the Board of Education for approval, in addition to being posted on our website for community viewing. And as you see here, this is the data. This is our preliminary report card. And so without going through all the specific data, there's a few things that I will point out. As you can see, the highest score that we can score within the district is a 78. We scored a 77 out of the 78. That's one piece that I would like to point out, which seems to be really part of course as to where we've been over the last few years. And once again, this really pertains to just the prevention and intervention methods that we have within the district to focus on our HIBs. The The next piece I would like to point out is just really the alignment of all of our buildings, because this is an assessment that is individually done by our buildings. However, as you can see, our scores are all aligned across the board. And that is due to, in part, to just the alignment and the collaboration that we see amongst our anti-bullying specialists to really ensure that we're using best practices across all of our buildings within the district. And last, the only score that we didn't score a perfect score in is our other staff instruction and training programs, which we got a 14 out of a 15. And a lot of that is really due to just the opportunity, the actual opportunity and availability of trainings that we have within the state for our individual staff and outside of our anti-bullying specialists. And so as we look forward, just some of the things that we look to focus on and some of the things that we look to continue to do. As a team, and me being the lead of our anti-bullying specialists, we meet on a monthly basis. And during those meetings, the things that we really discuss is just really try to identify patterns that we're seeing across our buildings. And during that time, what we would like to do and what we try to do is really come up with ways that we can prevent and initiatives that we can put in place to really address the trends that we're seeing across the board. Additionally, we will continue to work with our school safety and climate teams as well. And many of you are aware that we've been working with St. Elizabeth's, which we will continue to do. We're currently in the process of really reviewing our results from the Culture and Climate Survey, and at which time we will start to work on initiatives that have come out from the concerns that the surveys actually demonstrate. All right? And so last, I would say all of this information will be presented on the district website once we receive our actual report, and that can sometimes take a few months before we receive. It will be posted on the district website so that anyone has the ability to go in to see what that actual report card looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Next, we have Ms. Rossi with the NJSLA results.
All right, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to let you know that I did put this presentation on the website right now, so if you wanted to follow along, it's under presentations on the district website. So a few things about the NJSLA assessment, just to kind of look at it as a quick overview. First of all, the purpose is a qualitative measure, so really these assessments are used to kind of drive state policy and also funding that our districts receive. But we do also use these scores for one measure when we're looking at local decision making. When we look at some of the scores, there's a lot of data involved, and so I'll speak to the most important parts, but obviously you can review it, and any questions you have now or in the future, you can ask. ELA and math is on a 5-point score, and just a reminder that 1s and 2s, which did not meet expectations or partially meeting expectations, are areas where we want to have low scores, whereas when we look at 4s and 5s, which are meeting or exceeding, that's where we want to have our higher scores, so we can have the majority of students meeting or exceeding expectations. On the science assessment, it's a 4-point score, so you're looking at 3s and 4s for proficiency or advanced proficiency. One of our focuses right now is quality data. We get a lot of data as a school system, and we're fortunate about that we have different measures that we can pull from and look to. We're really making sure that we're looking at data that's reliable and predicative, and usually we can come to those determinations because we use multiple measures to look at trends and patterns. I do think that's one of the most challenging things right now is that our different data sets are showing some different things, so those trends and patterns, since COVID, aren't as consistent or measurable. We have our STAR data, that is our internal metric, but we then look at NJSLA like we will tonight. NJGPA is showing something a little bit different, so the goal is over time that we'll be able to, again, kind of get to a baseline where we can draw important correlations there. When we look at any of this data, we're above the state average when we are meeting and exceeding proficiency, and below the state averages where students are not meeting or they're partially proficient. So again, that's the goal, and that's what we're continuing to show. Our big focus is growth, so the difference between growth and proficiency, of course we want students to catch up, we want them to be proficient, and in order to recover and accelerate learning, right now our kids need to grow at a rate that we've never seen before and we've never expected from them in order to catch up with proficiency levels that haven't been changed.
And the exciting part is we are seeing that. So I'm kind of going to give you a little bit of a heads up over what this data shows, and then I'll go into it. In language arts, our students are growing at rapid rates, larger rates than we've ever seen, which is incredible. So students are catching up in a fast, efficient way. That's partly due to the nature of the content. ELA is like a balloon, so it expands over time. So when you're talking about narrative writing, you're going to write narrative essays from the time you're in kindergarten until 12th grade. It increases with rigor and complexity, but those standards continue to grow, and you get exposure to them in a spiraled way each year. In math, we're seeing typical growth, and so that is allowing for stable proficiency. Our kids are moving forward and making progress, but not at the rate that is allowing them to catch up to where they need to be, and that is matching national data trends as well. So we're taking a look at how do we spark further growth so that they can catch up in a way that brings them back to where we were pre-COVID. Math is different. Math is like a staircase. So what's challenging there is like you're building and flying the plane at the same time. So you're teaching new content that relies on foundational skills, but you're filling in those foundational skills while you're teaching the new content. And so that's proving to be an area that we need to continue to target and focus on how to do that at a more rapid and focused rate. Science, we get data from these assessments, but the truth really is that that data isn't super helpful to us. It's not reliable, it doesn't match what we see, and it's not really informative. They don't have great reports that they provide back to us to really allow us to do the same data analysis that language arts and math does. And I'll speak to that a little bit further later. I just wanted to show you this because these are things we use. This is a student growth percentile chart. So we have these things from something like STAR. And if you look at these, there's 3 columns. The middle column is what you're looking for typical growth. And so you can see on the left chart is the math percentiles, and on the right chart is our reading percentiles. Ignore on the right chart that left circle all the way over in the left category. That is we also have STAR early reading, and so we do assess a few students in STAR reading at the earliest levels, which is Alpine, and so that's an outlier right now and doesn't really provide information or feedback related to this. But when we look at that middle level, you can see that kids are growing at an adequate rate. They're growing with typical growth, which is what we're looking for, and we are even pushing past typical growth, so we're in those high ends of typical growth or moving into high growth, specifically in the area of reading. So that's something that we utilize to look at not only each school, but each grade level inside of the schools. So now there's going to be slides with just a lot of numbers and data. So I'm going to focus your attention to the ones that are most important, and you can review these at your own leisure. So if you take a look at this is looking at our district data over the 22-23 school year for language arts. So the title obviously is going to direct you to what you're looking at. There's information on all the various levels, but we'll focus our attention on levels 4 and 5. So for levels 4 and 5, you can look down that column. Those are the meeting or exceeding standards for the 22-23 school year. And you can see the column all the way to the right shows us how we've increased from last year. So those numbers are going up consistently in percentiles, and our students are making growth and catching up pretty quickly. Even though the state asks us to present data in this way, you have to be careful looking at, these are different populations of students each year. So while we're comparing them, there are sometimes different cut scores that each year utilizes to look at proficiency rates. So there are lots of things that we look at when analyzing this data, but we are seeing gains, and that is exciting. When we look at our math scores, this is the same chart. If you focus on the right, you see level 4 and 5, and then further to the right is how that's changed from last year. And you can see that it's more inconsistent but stable. So you can see, and I'll speak to this a little bit later, but those higher level math courses, we are seeing huge gains. And that is related to some of the things that we're looking at and working on and focusing through that I'll talk to at the end. Our science data, we have a small decrease in our scores from level 3 and 4. So you can see what we scored this year as compared to last and how that's a change. Again, when you're looking at different cohorts, that's not as helpful to look at because you really want to compare what kids do from one year to the next, not what one cohort does and then the next, because they're having different experiences. This is a state comparison. So now we're looking at how our district compares to the state. And these are for language arts scores, levels 1 and 2. But I'm going to kind of fast forward through some of these and focus on our language arts scores, level 4 and 5, because again, that's meeting and exceeding our district versus the state. And you can see that our district is above the state across the board and growing at rapid rates and continuing to exceed state averages. You can see the same thing in math. Again, these are levels 1 and 2, but most importantly, we'll take a look at levels 4 and 5, which is, again, the proficiency levels. So when you look through the grades and you look at what our district is, how our district is faring compared to the state, you can see consistent above average scores across the board. Science has a similar way of presenting data. And again, this chart shows you for grades 5, 8, and 11, where we fall for grades 3 and, for levels 3 and 4, which again is proficiency for science compared to the state. And again, in this arena, what I just want to talk about is the reliability of this measure. This is kind of pre-COVID when we moved into the next-gen science standards. The next-gen science standards are three-dimensional, and they look at natural phenomenon for students to be scientists, not just learn about science, to engage in science. Yet we're still using a multiple-choice test that assesses in grade 5, 6 full grade levels worth of science content on a multiple-choice test, which is not how we're doing science anymore. And so our scores, or the scores across the state, where you see 70% of kids not demonstrating proficiency pre-COVID, you just have to really question how reliable that information is and what we're supposed to do with that data. So we have our own internal metrics. And one of the things we see that we're most proud of is our students' interest in science and really participating in high-level science, STEM academies, AP science, being recognized as a project lead the way, distinguished school. So we have a lot of indicators that students are performing well and excited, engaged, and pursuing science-based careers. These are our subgroup comparisons from 2022 to 2023. One of the biggest differences that we see here is in different cohorts of populations, but some things that we have in place right now compared to last year is our ELL alignment to a new, well, it's not new, but with our numbers changing, we now are aligned to the sheltered instruction model. So all teachers across the district were trained in 18 modules, or a lot, they're shaking their heads, a lot of learning online about how to meet the needs of our English language learners. And so when we talk about some noteworthy comments, our rate of growth is something that we are proud of and that we're trying to continue to accelerate. We are using data-driven decision-making, and we're really being targeted and focused and specific about the things that we're putting in place to help students. Our high school, which really is a representation of our cumulative efforts as students move through the district, was recognized, I think Dr. Beck mentioned this, as a U.S. News 23-24 Best High School Award using our COVID data, so that's really something. That data was based on the first time students took our assessments, the high-stakes assessments once again. When we look at NAEP data, one of the things, that's a national assessment, and that shows us that over the course of time, through this kind of interrupted learning that we navigated, students lost 20 years of performance. And so the question is, how long does it take to recover from those 20 years? And there are different various models out there that are showing recovery rates. And one of the things that I'm excited about is that we're lining up with some of the fastest recovery rates, which is exciting. We did apply for the high impact tutoring grant to focus, and it will be focused on math since that is the area of need, to try to facilitate filling gaps as quick as possible. We were supposed to find out in October, but we'll find out in November is apparently what we've been told. So we're waiting on feedback from that, and we're excited about the potential partnerships there. So math is interesting because really what we're seeing, and I spoke to that a little bit, and you could see in the data, is we really have 3 cohorts or clusters of student learners. So in terms of making decisions about how to address math, we really have to be careful and we really have to be considerate about the adjustments that we're making. So our students in K2 are having a normal experience learning the basic foundations of school. And so their foundations are intact and we see them making progress like we would have always expected. Our students in grades 3 through 7 are this COVID cluster that we're dealing with early learning and early foundational skills. Predominantly, grades 1 and 3 are core grade levels for language arts and math. And of course, grades 2 and, all of the grades are important, but where you're learning to read and then reading to learn, or your multiplication and division, your addition and subtraction, these core grade levels, if there was interruption there, it's very hard to build on those next grade levels. And so we have to go back and fill in those gaps, but we see that obviously those grade levels need different levels of support. Our students in grades 8 through 12, we can see based on our data here and our NJGPA scores that because they had already solidified some of those foundational skills, they are making progress and catching up at a much faster rate and doing really well. So in terms of a response and a solution, it's not one size, and we have to look at it in a multifaceted way. This slide just shows you, because it's interesting to me, but we don't get data like this anymore. But we have in the past where you, and I know you can't see it from there, but if you looked online, it compares our district data to the state, to the county, and to our DFG group, district factor group, which are high-performing districts that are like us. And so in math, we see this inverted performance because we were always at or above our district factor groups in math. So we know that what we've been doing works. We just have to adjust and figure out how we need to meet the needs of our learners along the pathway. So we have to be mindful and cautious that we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater as we're addressing math. And continued planning includes high-quality curriculum, standard-based assessments, New Jersey tiered system of response, making sure that all students have what they need at every level. Really looking at progress monitoring, so that's something that we've always had in place, but making sure that it's targeted and diagnostic and measuring the right skills. There's new standards that have been approved for language arts and math. We're really looking carefully about how that aligns with everything else that we're doing. Our teachers are continuing to receive training or to train one another because we have so many experts right here in our own district that it benefits them to have opportunities to share and collaborate together. And I guess just to close, I want to say how proud we are of our students, the resilience that they show and their ability to make the progress that we have. And then also to our staff members for working really hard and staying committed to the process throughout, even though it has surely been a unique couple of years. So thank you to everyone.
Does anyone at the table have questions for Tara? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to student representation.
Good evening. Today I'm here to talk about what has been going on recently in our school. Most recently, I'd like to say that we have held a collection of money for a family in Hackettstown. The money was raised from not only Sparta parents and citizens, but also from our teachers and some of the students. We raised over $500, and all of this money will be given directly to the family. I'm very happy to say that Sparta is Hackettstown strong and will be for any other schools that need it. In addition, I'd also like to add on to that. Last week we had our Spirit Week and our homecoming. Very successful, great homecoming, great Spirit Week, showing out that spirit is still something that is very important in Sparta.
Thank you. Unfortunately, our pep rally that was also scheduled to happen last week had scheduling conflicts and is being postponed to a date that is still to be determined. An upcoming fundraiser that is for the class of 2024 and the class of 2025 will be the Turkey Bowl, which is a fundraiser for prom in the spring. This is a friendly football game where the juniors and seniors will compete against each other. Any student is welcome to participate in the game, and this will be held on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I encourage anybody to come and watch. It'll be very fun.
That is all. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion? Thank you, Walter. Second.
Second.
Thanks, Lee. Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Abstain.
Ms. McMichael,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
I abstain also.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Okay, now with the superintendent's report. Dr. Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. On this evening's agenda, you will see a motion recommending Ms. Natalie Convery, formerly Ms. Weiska, as the new vice principal of Alpine Elementary School. Ms. Convery. Ms. Convery will be immediately replacing Ms. Madsen, who will be moving into the Mohawk Avenue School principal position at the end of February, once her maternity leave concludes. Ms. Convery has been a teacher in our district for 6 years and was the top recommended candidate out of a pool of over 60 applicants. I would like to thank the many Alpine staff members who served on interview committee and would like to congratulate Ms. Convery on her appointment. Closing the loop on the recent movement of administrators within our district. On this evening's agenda, you will find a recommendation for Dr. James Heinig to serve in the role of interim principal of Mohawk Avenue School from January 2nd through February 23rd. This role is necessary as it covers the time period between Mr. Gregory's retirement and Ms. Madsen's start date. Dr. Heinig is an experienced school leader who served as the superintendent of Caldwell, West Caldwell schools from 2012 to 2021 prior to his retirement. He was an assistant superintendent in the Roxbury School District before that. More recently, Dr. Heinig has served in multiple short-term interim positions, including one in Sussex County, and we are excited to welcome him to this role in serving the students and staff of Mohawk Avenue School. I wanted to draw attention to a community email that Ms. Rossi sent last week pertaining to the Governor Educator of the Year. As most of you are aware, each year we ask for nominations for outstanding teachers and education service professionals in each of our buildings to be honored by the New Jersey Department of Education. Our district has an overwhelming number of excellent educators, and the community's participation in this annual award is another way to recognize our teachers and staff for all they do for our students and school community. There are two exciting items on this evening's agenda that are significant and require additional explanation. In order of agenda appearance, the first is the architectural proposal, which is a pre-referendum agreement with our current architect firm. As you know, at numerous Board of Education meetings, I have been updating the public on our attempts to solve the overcrowding issues at Alpine Elementary School, as well as the facility issues faced by Alpine and Helen Morgan schools. We have spent months searching for properties in Sparta Township that might fulfill our needs to possibly build a new elementary school, and to date have not found the ideal location to fit our needs. After spending a lot of time meeting internally, as well as with our architect, we have come up with a preliminary plan, and I will stress that this is a preliminary plan, that would solve the facility and overcrowding issues. The plan would include implementing multiple and significant upgrades to the Alpine and Helen Morgan facilities. Such upgrades would include, but not be limited to, new HVAC systems that would include air conditioning throughout both buildings, installation of new windows and doors, restroom upgrades, and roofing. The plan would also include various and necessary upgrades to other buildings in our district as well. To address the space issue, the preliminary plan also includes an addition to Alpine Elementary School, which would include the necessary number of classrooms and educational spaces to accommodate our growing enrollment and educational needs. The plan would also eliminate the modular buildings being used as classrooms on Alpine's campus. This preliminary plan would address the facility upgrade and space needs in our district, and would do so at a fraction of the cost of building an entirely new elementary school. I cannot stress enough that these plans are very preliminary and will warrant further research and architectural work, which is why the pre-referendum agreement with our architect is necessary this evening. As I stated in a previous board meeting, the time has come to stop brainstorming and talking about possible solutions to our needs, and to take actual steps toward addressing these needs. The pre-referendum agreement is just the first step in a multi-step process. With this update this evening, the community is now up to date with this initiative, and I will continue to keep the community updated as this process progresses. The other item of note is the pre-K expansion operational plan that is on this evening's agenda. As I've stated in previous board meetings, we have applied for pre-K expansion funding with the NJDOE. A few weeks ago, we received notification from the NJDOE that our application was accepted. That notification was embargoed, and we were not allowed to share the approval with the school community. Thankfully, that embargo was officially lifted yesterday during our meeting with the NJDOE, as luck would have it, just in time for me to announce it at this board meeting. What pre-K expansion funding will allow us to do is eventually expand our pre-K program offerings to all 3- and 4-year-old children in the Sparta community free of charge. This expansion is to take place in phases, with the first phase beginning in January. Come January, we will open 1 pre-K classroom in the Helwyn Morgan School, and 12 students who are next in line in our current pre-K wait list will be notified very soon that they can attend pre-K in this classroom. Additionally, the funding we receive will allow the tuition-based students currently enrolled in our program at Alpine School to receive a refund on their tuition paid this year and will not be charged tuition for the remainder of the school year. The second phase of this expansion is planned currently and will be designed to expand our pre-K program offerings beyond the walls of the schools in our district. We will look to either partner with current preschool centers in Sparta Township or lease additional space to accommodate additional pre-K classrooms. This second phase is to be implemented for the 24-25 school year. The pre-K expansion program is a multi-year process designed to grow the program over time. I would like to reiterate that the pre-K expansion funding is designed to expand our pre-K offerings beyond what we currently offer. The long-range plan calls for us to continue offering pre-K at Alpine School, which reaffirms the continued need to address the overcrowding at Alpine School. And that is my report for this evening.
Thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the HIB report?
Motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Lee. Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. McMichael,
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Joanne, do you have any communications or? No? Okay. Delegate liaison reports. Does anybody have that? Lauren?
Just a quick shout out that School Boards Conference is next week, and I'm looking forward to attending with you with the newborn. So we'll see how that goes. But our many staff members, administrators, and fellow board members will be there. It's a great opportunity for us to learn, and I just encourage everyone to share notes. Let's go to different sessions, and there's great takeaways there. I will be forwarding you the notes from the Sussex County School Boards meeting. There was one this week, and a lot of it did focus on security and threat assessment, of which we know from Dr. Beck's reports that Sparta does lead the way in that. One element that came up that another BA in the county did bring up was the cost of the digitized mapping that now is incurred by the districts. That's an additional budget item that happened this year that used to be covered by the county commissioners. And the one question that did come up, if you wouldn't mind speaking to that, is that would that be something that would be updated yearly, or how often is that updated within our budget? But otherwise, everything that was shared are things that we have in place in our district and ways that we can avoid cyber attacks and things of that nature. So I'll share that with you all after this meeting, and looking forward to seeing many of you at school boards.
Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah, just to address the digital mapping. So digital mapping was a statewide initiative over the past couple of years. And when it first became a mandate from the Department of Education, from the state, it was centrally located that the county actually picked up the cost, as you said, Lauren. That grant that they were using to fund that for all the schools in the county has since run out. And this year, we were informed that they would no longer be funding that the mapping project, which has to be updated every year. Even if nothing changes to your buildings, they need to reaffirm it, and it costs money for storage space on their server and all that. So we have incurred the cost. Luckily, it's not terribly expensive. It's $500 per building, so it's $2,500 total for the district, which is now part of, we learned after our budget was completed, but will now be budgeted as part of the budget.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I just have an update for Sparta Education Foundation. The registration for the Turkey Trot is open and ongoing until November 23rd. There's a 5K and also a 1-mile fun run. And I believe the district sent out an email, or it was the Sparta Education Foundation, not too long ago, that they are looking for volunteers. So if you're interested in volunteering, you can reach out to Sparta Education Foundation for that. And if you'd like to run, skip, walk, whatever it may be on Thanksgiving before you eat some turkey, go ahead and sign up now for the Turkey Trot.
Thank you, Wendy. Anybody else? No, okay, moving on. Public comment number 1. Public comments are invited on all matters pertaining to action items only at this time. Please state the action item number as well as your name, municipality, and group affiliation if appropriate. For the record, each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. Once you've had your allotted 3 minutes to speak, you will not be permitted to speak again until public comment number 2. All statements should be directed to me as presiding officer. The board or administration may or not respond to any questions or comments after the conclusion of public participation. Ready? Ready? Yeah. Okay. Mr. Rivers?
Should I wait for?
You can begin. They're just signing in.
And I'll give everybody a 1 minute, just hold up the high sign to let you know you have 1 minute left.
Thank you.
All right.
My name is Brent Rivers. I am a supervisor of ELA here in the district, but I'm not here in my official professional capacity. I'm just here representing myself, my own opinions, thoughts, and feelings as a professional educator, speaking specifically tonight about 1524. One of the fundamental ways that language arts instruction has changed since you were in school and since I was in school is that we are less interested in the intentions of our writers. We are more concerned with the impact of their choices. Let me give you an example. Once upon a time, it was not uncommon to hear a question like, why did J.D. Salinger make Allie's mitt a symbol for Holden's trauma? That is a question about an author's intention, and it is a question that frustrates students who feel like it's impossible to answer. How could anyone know what was in J.D. Salinger's heart while he wrote that book in 1951? It feels kind of arbitrary, and this approach was convincing students that English itself was arbitrary. So instead, we shifted to looking at the impact of language. We notice instead J.D. Salinger's choices. Through text we can observe he creates Holden and his trauma right there with his language. The impact of those choices are things that students can really chew on, that they can extend to other subjects and contexts, that they can engage with and apply or reject in their own writing. In this, they develop their autonomy, their intelligence, and their capability to see meaning in all of the language that surrounds us in the real world. I'm proud that students today graduate with an awareness that impact is more important than intent. A month ago, members of this public, staff, students, parents, other members of our community begged you to understand the impact of repealing 5756, to understand the impact that it will have on our queer students, our queer staff, and their non-queer allies. After 2 very contentious public sessions, the public was told that they were overreacting, that this board does not have hate in its heart. But those sound like intentions.
1 minute.
Arbitrary and invisible. Leave the intentions behind, because tonight you have the chance to make an impact with your choice. Language arts was reborn with the questions, what do you notice and what do you wonder? Our students discover that text and meaning are everywhere, and they start to recognize the impact of their choices. They are learning how the world works and where they stand in that world, what impact they can and should have on that world. Stephen Sondheim reminds us that children may not obey, but children will listen. Let our most vulnerable children hear you make the right choice, because their bullies are listening too. Thank you.
I'm not allowed.
Hi, I'm Emily Scott. I'm a teacher at Sparta High School, Hamburg, New Jersey. I'm speaking on agenda item, I guess, number 15.25. As chair of the SEA Policy Review Committee, I'm here just to ask for clarification on some of the potential policy changes. Policy 3161 for teachers and 4161 for support staff. Examination for cause. How is the current policy different from the previous policy? And under Part C.3, where the policy states that the superintendent will get the staff members' examination results, What exactly does this mean? Does this not constitute a privacy violation? If not, can you please explain how so? Policy 3212 for teachers and 4212 for support staff about attendance. What constitutes excessive amounts of absences and what constitutes a pattern of absences? Both of these policy changes are for teachers and support staff only. Do the same policies and the same changes apply to supervisors and administrators? If so, where can these policies be located? What are their policies number? And if they don't apply, can you please explain why? Policy 5111, which is about the eligibility of resident and non-resident students. There was a clause in the original policy that said that students registered in the Sparta School District, if their parents were called up to active duty in the National Guard or any military service, that they would have the right to continue their education in the Sparta School District. That is being retracted, and I'm just wondering why. What's the rationale? Is that in the best interest of the student or child? They would be potentially removed from the school district and then potentially placed back into the school district, and we know moves like this are not good for students. Policy 5116, education of homeless children and youths, and then also elaborated under the definitions for policy 5116. It states that a homeless student's status shall be immediately decided upon whether or not they can come to or remain in the Sparta School District. What exactly does immediately mean? Will there be disruptions in the student's education process? And how do we ensure that no bureaucratic red tape doesn't slow down this whole process for those students? And then finally, policy 8500, food services. While I commend you for allowing students to acquire breakfast or lunch regardless of whether or not they have money or are in quote-unquote arrears regarding their cafeteria debt, I will ask you why we have such a thing as like lunch debt or cafeteria debt to begin with. Why can we not provide free
30
meals for
seconds.
every student every day? It would seem that if we want all of our students to succeed to the very best of their abilities, that we should ensure that their basic needs are being met and that they don't feel pressure, stress, or the social stigma related to lunch debt. You know, we can find money for a multitude of other causes that don't affect our students directly. Why can't we feed them daily? Okay. I also have copies, if you'd like them.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Parker Hine Mountain Trail. Today I'll be talking about 15.24. Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to say thank you to not only the board for allowing me to speak, but also the people of this town. And that brings me to an interesting point, the ability to talk freely. It's our First Amendment and has been in place since December 15th, 1791. Thank you, Mrs. J. This amendment is one of, if not the most important amendments, because it allows people to speak freely about pretty much anything they want to talk about. For example, right now I could say, I hate the New York Jets. There's no punishment for that. It's just my right and opinion that I can share. And if I share that with someone, they don't have to tell a Jets fan. The demographics of this country are constantly changing. As we grow, so do the number of LGBTQ plus students in our communities. In Gen Z, the current percentage that is LGBTQ plus is 19.7%. For those of you who do not know, Gen Z is the current age range of 11 to 26. This is a group of kids who are in school currently, whether that is middle school, high school, or even college. That's me and Sarah's age, or even for some of you, that is your kid's age. Although we are just starting to find our voice, we want to be acknowledged just like adults. Every human being wants to be seen, valued, and heard, regardless of our identity or sexual orientation. We are human beings. Our brains all look the same, we bleed red, and we experience happiness and pain. If students feel more comfortable expressing their feelings to a teacher rather than their parents, why does it have to be required that the teacher must alert someone? It's a confession. And the last time I checked, confessions are usually done in private, and that person is protected, unless it is something so horrible that it should be reported to the police. I speak on behalf of many students in the Sparta school system. We expect our privacy to be honored just as any adult who confides in someone expects the same. It's not against the law to be LGBTQ+. It's not even a town ordinance. If a student goes to a teacher, it's because they trust that person. And if they don't want their parents to be told, a teacher should be allowed to respect that. I see signs around that say that this town is stigma-free. Isn't that the opposite of putting stigma on an LGBTQ+ student? Students and forcing them to be identified as such? Why can't they just be a person with feelings? And if they want to take out an ad in the Sparta Independent exclaiming their sexuality, they have the right to do so.
1 minute.
What we should be debating are the complexities that surround the issue. What are the complexities of the student who has no one to talk to? What are the complexities of the parent who is okay with their child's sexuality? How about the parent who isn't? What are the complexities for a board member who has to answer to the public? A teacher? And on this topic, I'd like to talk to all of us as citizens of Sparta. We need to not only treat our board members, but also everyone else in this room together as friends. With other views.
Parker, just address up here, okay?
Sorry, sir.
Thank you.
Even though we may be people with other views on topics, we may not all agree on the same topics, but we all need to have the same interest at heart, which is to do what is best for the children of Sparta Township schools. Thank you.
Good job. Scott Knoll, Sparta. I'll be speaking on 1524. I'm here to speak against rescinding policy 5756. For the 85 to 93% of straight students and their families, the revocation of 5756 does nothing. Similarly, for the 2/3 of LGBTQ plus kids who do have support at home, rescinding 5756 does very little. The parents are already engaged and know what is going on with their kids. The revocation of 5756 specifically targets those kids most at risk, the kids most likely to face emotional or physical abuse at home, to be kicked out of their homes. Revoking 5756 specifically puts at risk those children it was created to protect. Let's be clear, revoking of 5756 does more than open the door to bullying, it is bullying. Revocation of 5756 is a proclamation that this board, that this town, does not see LGBTQ plus students as fully part of this community, and believes this so strongly that is willing to stand against the state to deliver that message. This board is not wrestling with an issue to determine a compromise in the best interests of our community. This board is actively attempting to revoke a bipartisan policy in place and working for 6 years, implemented by a Republican governor and developed in consultation with psychologists, counselors, pediatricians, and educators to protect a group of at-risk students. I don't actually expect this argument to be persuasive. It is a logical stand against an emotional issue. I hope this one is. The Sparta Board of Education is inflicting a tax increase of more than 5.8% on all of the homeowners of this district, an increase driven largely by excessive legal expenses. Revocation of 5756 has already compelled the state of New Jersey to file lawsuits in Hanover, Middletown, and Marlborough. Pursuing this action will open Sparta up to a similar and expensive lawsuit, a suit we, the residents of Sparta, do not want and certainly do not want to pay for. This board may not care about bigotry, bullying, student welfare, or being on the wrong side of history, but it is my hope that there is some sense of fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Pender from Frieden Township, and I'm speaking on agenda item 1524. I was born and raised in Sparta, and my entire adolescence was shaped through its K-12 public education. I could never guess that 30 years later I would stand in this very building where I attended middle school to speak out to urge the board not to rescind policy 5756 regarding transgender students. I say I could never guess that I would be here speaking to you, but life unfolds in unusual and beautiful ways. My oldest child is transgender and came out to us in 7th grade because they felt that even though it was scary to disclose what they were feeling, ultimately they felt safe doing so and felt that their family would support them. We had no previous experience with anyone who was transgender, so we had a lot of work to do to educate ourselves and find support. Currently, my son is a thriving 20-year-old college student who consistently makes the dean's list and is active in clubs and leadership roles because they are in a very affirming environment. Policy 5756 is so important because it protects students whose learning environment is already compromised by being in a marginalized group. Transgender kids who live in a supportive home and believe that they will be accepted and affirmed are more likely to come out to their parents on their own and ultimately have parental support. Policy 5756 is in place to protect those kids that are likely to not have parental or home support. These children face the real decision of living authentically, knowing they are risking emotional and/or physical violence or even the threat of homelessness. This policy is not about parental rights. It's about protecting vulnerable students whose only safe, affirming environment may be their school and the staff that work there. This policy does not exclude parents from the equation, but rather seeks to work with them after assessing the safety of a child's situation.
1 minute.
As a parent of a transgender child and an LGBTQ ally, I would like to remind you of your oath as board members. The Sparta School District's mission clearly states that it is committed to providing a safe and healthy learning environment for every child. The district slide presentation entitled Nuts and Bolts of Being a Board of Education Member reaffirms this by stating that board members are required to make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of all children. This district policy may be the only lifeline a transgender child has, and I sincerely hope that when you all lay your heads down to sleep tonight, you will think about that. You'll think about the fact that rescinding this policy has real-life consequences for students in your district.
Hi there, Todd Gillespie. I'm a resident of Sparta Township. I've been a resident for 10 years now, and I'm speaking as the president of PFLAG Sussex County. PFLAG is the first and largest organization dedicated to...
Sir, just what agenda item?
It's the agenda item 1524.
Thank you. Continue.
Thank you. PFLAG is the first and largest organization dedicated to supporting, educating, and advocating for LGBTQ+ individuals and their families. Our local chapter is comprised not only of LGBTQ members, but also parents, allies that want to create a safe and affirming world for their LGBTQ children. Our mission is to help those parents support and advocate for what is best for their children, and that's what brings us here tonight. PFLAG was founded 50 years ago out of a parent's concern for the safety of her son, and we strongly support parents' rights to advocate for the safety and the well-being of their children. We also acknowledge and understand the struggle that some parents have when their kid may not be the more conventional child that they had anticipated. Rescinding School District Policy 5756 does not help either the parents nor the children who are dealing with this complicated family situation. Instead of continuing 6 years of established practice following expert advice, the board appears to be intent on targeting transgender student issues to create political theater, without concern for the students or the parents. We as PFLAG are also here to offer support and education on transgender issues to the members of this board, to the administrators, to the counselors, and most especially to the parents of these students. I think we can all agree that an educated and informed society is critical to our democracy. PFLAG holds monthly public support and educational sessions for anyone interested in better understanding the issues and helping to create a safe and affirming environment. Thank you.
Michigan or somewhere else in the area about the parental rights. Yeah.
Good evening, Ann O'Dare, Pinecone Lane in Sparta. It's about 1524. The fact that the first reading of the motion to rescind 5756 passed last time without any public discussion or input was not surprising, but it's shocking. It's shocking because it was done in such an underhanded way. I think the only time that kind of deceitful move is done is when you know it's wrong and you want to do it anyway, or you don't really care about the impact it will have on the people who it affects. So it's either ignorance or malice, and either way, it's wrong. And no matter how hard you try to implement these discriminatory changes to these policies the right way, you are never going to find a right way to do the wrong thing. We know the rescission of 5756 is wrong when you have the backing of the extremist leader of the Sussex County GOP, who likens being gay and transgender to being mentally ill. And members of this board liked that quote on social media. That's disgusting. It's inhumane and it's wrong. And we know rescinding 5756 is wrong when you have the backing of people who take pages out of Moms for Liberty playbook to rescind this policy, to ban age-appropriate books that have never been a problem, and to disrupt expertly developed and age-appropriate curricula. That organization and the people who follow them are not the good guys. Good guys do not get declared an extremist group by human rights organizations. Good guys don't quote Hitler in their newsletters. They aren't chummy with white supremacists and hate groups like the Proud Boys. And never in history are good guys the ones who ban books. When you claim students first and voices of reason, and then you turn around and take potentially life-saving protections from student for no reason at all.
1 minute.
That's not students first, and that's the farthest thing from a reasonable voice. If students feel safer coming to a teacher for guidance and help with their identity and don't feel safe with their parents, then maybe parental rights advocates need to take a good look at their own responsibilities as parents. Be the good guys and protect our kids. Don't kowtow for political points when you're supposed to be nonpartisan. You're using marginalized students as your political pawns. There will always be LGBTQ students, there will always be transgender students, and your prejudice does not change that. They're not going away. It's your responsibility to reconcile that with yourselves. Taking protections and stabilizing forces away from any child is inhumane, whether you are comfortable with that student population or not. Do not let this be your legacy. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Victoria Tynes, and I am addressing the discussion of Policy 5756, Agenda Item 15.24, that will require for students that change their name and pronouns or identify as transgender to be outed to their parents or guardians. I'm informed that it's not a mandatory law in New Jersey. However, it does affect the mental health of transgender youth. First of all, let's just start with simple facts. It is recommended by the state of New Jersey that you don't repeal this policy. While you most likely remember banning the upside of unrequited from the middle school last year, what you're doing now isn't just removing literature, which is still an issue. You are discriminating against a whole group of people. If a child doesn't want to tell their parent that they are transgender, anyone should be able to accept that. Some of you need to stop pushing your ideologies onto others at the expense of an oppressed group of people. Policies like this, according to the website lgbtmap.org, MAP standing for Movement Advancement Project, which has a collection of the states and where certain laws and policies are promoted, notes that, quote, since 2020, there has been a rapidly escalating legislative attack on transgender people, and particularly transgender youth. This includes a growing number of bills and now laws that explicitly require school staff to out transgender youth to their family, often without regard for whether doing so might put the child at risk of harm. And underneath New Jersey, it states, quote, state law does not force school staff to out transgender students to their parents or parent. So if it isn't mandatory, why are you doing it? I think everyone on the board, including the parents that are supporting repealing this policy, should really take that question into consideration. Furthermore, this issue isn't black and white. There are too many complexities for you to sit here and after so many years, due to the fact that the guidance has been in place since 2017, to just get rid of it. Also, in your own Board of Education Code of Ethics, it states, quote, the board member will, number 2, make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, social standing, and any other category protected by state or federal law. No one should have to come out before they are ready. By making it a forceful situation, you are single-handedly jeopardizing the mental health of trans students. This is not meeting the individual needs of a transgender student. If you weren't aware, homophobia, transphobia, and anti-LGBTQ attitudes are quite prevalent, especially in this town. As a board, you need to consider the experience of those who are not cisgender, heterosexual, white, Christian, able-bodied men.
Hello, my name is Sean Carroll. I live here in Sparta, and my children attend the Sparta Public Schools. I'm speaking regarding agenda item 1524. I introduced myself at the last meeting, but as a reminder, I'm a pediatric nurse and a local business owner. I grew up in Sussex County between Vernon and Sparta, and my father was a police lieutenant in town for his entire career. We love Sparta and are devoted to this town and its community. I happily moved here with my own family so that my kids could be raised in Sparta as well. I am transgender, and I transitioned while living here over 20 years ago. There was very little public information about trans people then, and my family and I were completely blind and went for many years with limited information and even less support. From day one, it felt like a family secret, and we were very worried about the impact on how our neighbors and friends would react. I was not kicked out of my home, but I was excluded from family activities in the name of making things easier for my siblings. I was reminded that if my siblings lost friends, or if my parents were ostracized by their coworkers, that it would be my fault. And it was a lot of weight for a kid to shoulder, particularly one who was grappling with major identity issues at the time. But I still didn't have it that badly compared to other trans folks, and I knew that. I had read stories about people losing all contact with their families, becoming homeless and alone, and that was always my biggest fear. And while my personal situation and relationship with my family have both improved greatly over these last few decades, that fear of exile that sat in my heart for so long during those days still lives there. And that is my biggest worry as you overturn this bill. Hopefully, most of the kids who are questioning their gender will already have supportive parents at home and who already are aware of what's going on with their kids. Another chunk of those students will work with their counselors and teachers to safely talk to their parents and ensure that they're all part of the same team. I'm not too worried about those kids. I'm worried about the few kids who will now be forced to be outed to parents who won't be supportive, to parents whose rhetoric I've seen online too often, who say, if my son tried wearing a dress, he'd never leave his room again. People who say these kids need a firm hand, these thoughts need to be slapped out of them. Folks who declare, not in my house. The children of these parents are in true danger, not just physical, but emotional danger. And what is our plan for these kids? How are we going to protect them? There's so much fear and misinformation surrounding trans people in the trans community. And I truly think the best way for us to close the gap on some of this divisiveness is to be open and vulnerable with each other. So that being said, I'd like to put it out there that I'm here as a resource. Anyone in this room is welcome to reach out to me and meet me for a drink in town. Hear my story, ask your questions. Put a real face to someone who's gone through this. Hear my perspective and let me hear yours. We are neighbors, our children are classmates, and I want this town to feel supportive and welcoming to all of us. Thank you.
Hello, Jennifer Grana, 4 Woodbine Lane from Sparta. I'm speaking about 15.24. So far tonight, we've heard a quote of the mission statement in Sparta and the Sparta Board of Education Code of Ethics. And just to bring it full circle, I was looking at the core values of the Sparta Township School District because regardless of how you feel personally, regardless of how you feel in your home, regardless of how you feel outside of this room tonight at board meetings, I'm appealing to you as board members and what your roles are. And I would imagine your roles as board members are to adhere to the Code of Ethics, support the mission statement of the Sparta School District, and support the core values of the Sparta Township School District, which are hanging all over the district. They used to be hanging in here. I know they're at the high school cafeteria, they're on the website, they're everywhere. And the #1 Sparta core value is the only one I need to read. And it says, cultivating an educational environment that fosters the social emotional well-being of all students enabling every child to feel supported and valued. In the end, tonight, when you decide to vote on that policy, I hope you keep that core value in mind, because that is what you are here for as board members, regardless of how you feel about anything. It's not about parents' rights. It's about the core values of the Sparta School District that you were elected and put in those seats to uphold. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Fagerston. I am a lifelong resident of Sparta Township, class of 1994. My husband is class of 1991, and my third daughter is a junior at the Sparta High School. Through book bannings, I'm speaking to specifically 1524. Through book bannings with LGBTQ literature, targeting teachers that support the community, and now removing a student's right to confidentiality, you have certainly worked hard. In fact, a recent board member speaking at a Sussex County GOP function stated that there is a fire that grows in her heart, making her feel the need to fight the LGBTQ community. You stated in your speech that this is a moral issue, which begs the question, how is this relevant to academics? According to your website, the mission of the Board of Ed is to create a safe and healthy learning environment. To that, I will share some statistics. 40% of transgender youth are not supported by their families, and 1 in 10 transgender children or teens are met with physical violence from their parents. As you can imagine, it's difficult to quantify the emotional neglect and abuse, so I don't have those statistics. While I cannot speak to parenting a child that is transgender, I can speak as a parent of a child in the LGBTQ community. I am so grateful that her teachers supported her without fear of her safety. She recently shared with me that she came out to a teacher before us, her parents. While we consider ourselves open and supportive parents, she needed to verbalize it safely as a means to prepare herself to tell us. To that teacher, I'm eternally grateful for providing that supportive space at a time that my daughter was living such a fragile life. While I can understand looking at this through the eyes of a parent of an elementary school child, unfortunately, this hits differently for an older child. This policy is spanning K through 12. You need to think about your older students. Not every home in Sparta is supportive and nurturing. I have seen children in the LGBTQ community thrown out of their homes, financial support being taken from them, and most often being shamed and dealing with emotional abuse because of their sexuality and gender identities.
1 minute.
Requiring a teacher to knowingly out a child to their family is potentially taking away the only support that that child has. It is your job as Board of Ed members to also protect the students. Finally, I will share this with you. If you are parenting, and I mean rolling up your sleeves and digging into the discomfort of it, you already know who your child is, and you should not need a teacher to tell you.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Sutphin. Regarding agenda item of the 5756 policy, I have an important question. If a teenager, 5'5", 92 pounds, told you that she is fat, would you give her dieting tips and a discount on laxatives? And when she eventually dies from complications of starvation, would you stand at her grave and applaud her for living her authentic truth? How is this different from sending a confused child on the transgender track toward a 40% suicide rate, chemical castration, infertility, puberty blockage, and infection-causing surgery? Don't let the tail wag the dog. Children and teenagers do not have the ability to see around the corner. They need adults to do that for them. God bless America. Thank you.
That makes sense? Like,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Just some thoughts.
I'm speaking of agenda item 1524. I'm Jessica Gallego. I'm speaking here tonight as a licensed clinical social worker in the community. As a social worker, my ethical responsibility has brought me here to discuss the second reading of policy 5756 regarding transgender students. I stand here united, knowing all of us can find some common ground for district policies affecting our youth. To name a few, we want children to be educated, feel safe in school, and come home to their families who accept and support them. We all want the power to make sure those goals are accomplished. If you are in this room and have a positive, secure, and confident relationship with your children, you should be pretty proud. And thus, policy 5756 isn't probably impacting you. I'm here tonight to talk as an ally with 1/3 of transgender youth who do not have a safe, secure, and accepting home. Having safeguards to protect vulnerable youth from suicide is a moral and ethical responsibility and should be to everyone. State guidelines are issued to districts to ensure these safeguards are in place to protect the most vulnerable youth. I want to empathize a policy the school is considering of abolishing that protects 1/3 of youth. LGBTQ young adults who report high levels of parental rejection are 8 times more likely to attempt suicide. Less than 1 in 3 transgender and non-binary youth found their home to be gender affirming. Less than. Did you know young people report lower rates of attempting suicide when they have access to LGBTQ affirming spaces and people? That's the teachers and staff of the school district. LGBTQ youth are not inherently prone to suicide risk because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, but rather placed at a higher risk because of how they're mistreated and stigmatized. I fear removing this policy from Sparta Township Public Schools will further isolate, create stigma, and lead to increased isolation and risk of suicide to the students here. We may think that our decisions are guided purely by logic and rationality, but our emotions always play a role in our good decision-making process. Please reconsidering abolishing this policy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Juliet Sanchez, and I am a senior at Sparta High School, and I'm talking about 15.24. So, as many have stated, this is not simply about intent. You can claim not to have hate in your heart. You can claim to support all of our students, but by removing this policy, you're contradicting your claims. This policy provides protections for some of our most vulnerable students, and by taking that away, with no replacement, you're making it abundantly clear you do not care about these students. You do not care about their wellness. You do not care about their education. What is clear is that you only care about your own personal agenda, that one that is hateful at its very core. If you want to do what's best for the students, listen to them. My peers and I have come up to the microphone in a packed room full of animosity and contention. You can meet with the stakeholders. You can listen to your educational professionals who have also come up to this microphone and told you how they feel. You can listen to the many, many, many community members who have spoke today. Please, vote against this removal. Show this community that you mean what you say when you talk about social emotional wellness. It's at the top of our list in Sparta. If there's no hate in your heart, you'll vote no, plain and simple. Show this community that you uphold the Sparta goals. You can show us tonight.
Hello, can you hear me? Patty Rivas, Sparta. Members of the board, today I stand before you with deep concerns about the position, 1524, before I'm asked, about the position you're putting our town in and the position you're putting vulnerable transgender students in. For anyone who's watched the mind-blowing videos from the GOP Awards dinner, if you haven't, I suggest you do, several of our sitting board members were presented awards there, and it's really clear from your speeches that there's a strong commitment to fight for your personal values rather than for the rights and safety of our collective students. And you admitted on video that your fight will mean lots of legal battles and expenses paid for with our tax dollars. So, serious question for those board members, one of whom is not here tonight. What is it that you're truly fighting for? Is it to shield your children from learning what transgender means? If that's the case, it's important to recognize the futility of this fight. In an interconnected world, information is readily accessible. Unless you plan to isolate your children from the rest of society, they will inevitably encounter these concepts. The world we live in is diverse and evolving, and attempts to make something go away simply because you don't like it are impractical and misguided. Your children will inevitably learn what it means to be gay and transgender, if not in a safe, controlled school environment, then from their peers, bullies, or perhaps their own internal struggles when they start having feelings they can't explain. By providing education in a safe and structured setting, we can ensure that this learning is accompanied by understanding and empathy. For many transgender youth, as you've heard many times tonight, school may be the only place where they can access information about their own identity and receive the support they need. Repealing protective laws sends a message that they're not valued, and this can have severe consequences for their mental and emotional well-being. And what I find is really ironic is that those advocating for inclusive education, all of us speaking tonight,
1 minute.
we're not the ones who are going to have at-risk youth. Our homes are places where kids are free to be who they are, and our children have parents they can talk to and trust with anything. It's your children who may lack this safety and understanding. It's your children who might one day desperately need a safe haven to turn to. In our hearts, we hold empathy for all children, regardless of their background, and it's our collective responsibility to ensure their well-being. So you probably already have your minds made up, and this doesn't mean anything, but really, from the bottom of my heart, asking you to take this opportunity to do the right thing for this town for once. Abandon your personal agendas, but don't abandon these young members of our community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica Beery-Kunz from Hardiston, and I'm talking on 5756 also. I'm the proud mother of an AFabulous son, and if you don't know what AFab is, you can look it up or ask me. Firstly, the parental rights issue is a fear-mongering tactic that has been used to inflame an ignorant base that doesn't seem to understand that parental rights have never been in jeopardy and are as strong as ever. Like the bumper sticker says, no one's treading on you, sweetie. It's utterly disgusting that safety of students has become politicized. Of course, if a student is a danger to themselves or others, parents and guardians must be notified. However, the forced outing of transgender students who don't feel safe at home is dangerous to the physical and mental well-being of students, as well as a possible cause of homelessness for LGBTQ youth, who are already a very vulnerable group, as you've heard many times tonight. We must trust the kids to come out at home if and when they feel safe to do so, and provide them with a safe space at school in the meantime. We must support these youths, not threaten them and endanger them. If you need trainings at school to educate faculty and staff, I recommend contacting Garden State Equality or EDGE New Jersey. Both of these organizations happily provide education on how to best support the LGBTQ youth in your schools. On this issue, listen to the people who have lived experience with it, not the voices who are very loud and pontificating out of fear and angling for political gain. Only a handful of New Jersey's 600-plus school districts are taking unnecessary steps to go against state guidance. As was already mentioned, they are being sued by the state, so be prepared for that if you vote to abolish 5756. However, LGBTQ plus youth and their families still worry when they hear the hateful rhetoric coming out of these districts. Safe schools have never been a controversial or partisan topic in New Jersey. In fact, the transgender student guidance issued by the Department of Education started with the bill that Governor Christie signed because safe schools save lives. Governor Christie knew that safe schools save lives. I encourage you to remain with the New Jersey that I am proud of and stay on the right side of history. Thank you.
Hi, just want to thank the board for all their hard work and dedication. And I'm Paul Sesko from Hanover Township, and I want to address 1524. I first want to say that I do realize that there's gender dysphoria, and I respect that. And I think every child should be welcome in the school system, and I think you guys do. My mom's cousin was lesbian. She was a Army paratrooper, and she was a funeral home director and undertaker. She was well accomplished. She knew how to handle people and talk to them and make them feel comfortable in their time of need. And we always enjoyed talking with her. Me and my wife's niece, she's lesbian, and we were the first ones to welcome her in our family too. But I do want to address the lawsuit in Hanover Township. Because we repealed the 5756, we're not being sued. Only if you try to make a change to it, like Manalapan, Marlboro, and Middletown, will you be sued by the Attorney General. The Attorney General tried to enjoin our 5756 with the 8463 policy, and he didn't allow that, or the judge didn't allow that, so that's why we're not being sued. So when you repeal something, this policy, you won't be sued, just to let you know. But just to try to bring some peace, you know, I'm sure everyone here is a loving parent, and you know, the parents that are against this, again, they're loving parents and they're talking to their kids. That's great that they have a robust relationship with them. But there's other parents, they may or may not have a robust relationship with them, but they do have a right to know what's going on with their children, especially since 90% of the kids that are transgender or identifying as transgender, it's a fad, 90% of them.
1 minute.
Sorry. That's by Abigail Schreier. She's an expert in it, and she's done research, talked with the families and everyone. And Meg Meeker's another one, expert, but and so the parents are concerned. They just want to be involved with their kids, and I don't see why you don't let the other parents be involved. This doesn't hurt you guys because you have a good relationship with your kids. So let them have that right. Respect that. Be inclusive to them also. Everybody needs to be included here. So I just want to say, you know, so before a kid, you know, I know Planned Parenthood, this is what I've heard, I've read, that I think a 13-year-old in this state can actually go there and get hormone blockers without parental consent. So what's happened to parental consent? And if this is a fad...
That's time, thank you.
That's time, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Weisbeck. I live on Greenfield Hill in Sparta. I'll be speaking on action number 15.24. As a senior in Sparta High School and as a student that has gone through the Sparta school system since kindergarten, I've been told how lucky I am to be in such a great school system. And I am lucky. I'm very grateful and fortunate for the education that Sparta Schools has provided me, which can be heavily accredited to the teachers. I am lucky to have gone through every single Sparta school and created a bond with every single teacher I have had. I think it's a fair statement that everyone is here today for the good of the students and children in our town. Broadly speaking, on behalf of many students in the Sparta community, I can confidently say that we find trust in the staff members of our school. So the question is, why take that away? Abolishing policy 5756 is weakening, if not completely taking away the ability of students to confide in teachers. This has a direct negative impact on the queer community in Sparta, especially the queer students in Sparta schools. From a student perspective, we all look at each other the same. Any student, no matter their sexuality, gender, race, or even haircut, is just a peer, a classmate, and a friend. We don't want to see each other struggle, and especially do not want the school to be a place where our peers struggle. Well, there's not much I can say to top what Parker said. I still ask that you recognize the point of view of students. We have trust in the teachers already, and a trust that may not be replicated at home. We support each other as students, and I ask that you do not take that away. The voices you are hearing are mainly of parents, many on their own behalf, many for their own beliefs, and many on behalf of their children. There are not many current students here, but they are asking and begging for your support from wherever they are tonight. From the perspective of a student and on behalf of other students, please rethink this.
My name is Robin Carras. I live in Sparta. I am a pastor for over 30 years, or just almost 30 years, but I've never served a church in Sparta. I'm speaking to 1524, and first of all, a real practical question. What are you replacing it with? Is there free-for-all? Who, does it depend on the principal of the school, guidance counselors? If you're repealing it, what is it being replaced with? And then I just wanted to tell some stories from my experience. I was trying to recruit somebody this week to work with youth for a youth group, and I started with, it's only once a month, and you just have to show up and support the person, and I was downplaying it. And then what I realized I needed to say was, you get to make a difference in these kids' lives. Growing up in the church that I grew up in, I had second moms and second dads, people that I could go to when I couldn't talk to my parents about stuff. And they say kids need like 12 adults that they can turn to other than their parents. And my kids don't have that. I wish they did in the world that we live in. It's hard to have those 12 people. But you need people that you can talk to that are not your parents, because your parents will not always understand, and you're not going to go to them first. So to cut off or the safe space for these kids, it's not healthy. It's not wise. I really, you are endangering kids. I'm saying everything that has been said, but, to create a safe space for the kids is so important. And again, if they're not telling their parents, there's a reason. Well, shoot, the joke, I asked my mom when I was a teenager, Mom, do you want to know when I lose my virginity? And her answer after a second was, no. Right? Parents can't take this, some of this stuff. We need other people. And to cut that off for people, it's not creating a safe space.
1 minute.
And the other thing, I almost never wear this collar. It's really, really uncomfortable, but I do so that people know that this is my faith, that Jesus cares, and Jesus always stood with marginalized people. He stood against the self-righteous and the people with power. Stand with the vulnerable. Thank you.
Hey, guys. Daniel O'Malley, Sparta, New Jersey. I'm here to speak on 1524. All right, I'm going to read parts of this, okay? It says, approach. The policy established board's expectations for addressing the needs for transgender students in compliance with applicable anti-discrimination laws for grades 6 through 8. The school district shall accept a student's asserted gender identity. Parental consent is not required. That is a problem, because like all these people are saying, parents should know about their kids, but if teachers are hiding stuff from them, how could they even discuss something with them without knowing what's going on? Okay, let's keep going, because I got other parts here. All right, student dress code should not be enforced strictly for transgender and gender nonconforming students. Now this I have an issue with, because my son wore a shirt that says, I love hot moms, okay? And it was a huge problem, okay? And he got in trouble for it, and I got a call from the principal. But, is a pride shirt okay? Because that's a sexual innuendo, isn't it? Or a sexual preference, at least. Okay? Okay. School staff members may not disclose information that reveal a student's transgender status except as provided by this policy allowed by law. The school district shall keep confidential current, new, prospective students' transgender status in accordance with this policy. So keeping secrets from parents, right? And in this next part, this is good too. In accordance with the policy, permanent student record filing with student's birth name may be kept in a separate confidential file. So they're keeping confidential information on our kids, okay? This is part of this policy right here. It's written right here, okay? So confidential file on your kid. Separate file containing records bearing the student's chosen name may also be kept. So whatever you decide you're going to name their kid, they're going to throw it out. If the student has previously been known at school or in school records by birth name, the principal or designee should direct should direct staff members to use the student's chosen name and not the student's birth name. I chose my kid's name, okay? His name's Daniel, not Danielle or whatever else, okay? I take pride in my family, in my child, okay? And every parent should feel that way, all right? If the school district changes a student's name or gender identity, it must also maintain locally a separate record reflecting the student's legal name and sex, not gender, okay, assigned at birth until the receipt of documentation of a legal change or name or gender. All right. Provide transgender students with the same opportunities to participate in physical education as well as other accordance with the gender identity. So I want to know if people in this room, you know, if your kid plays, let's say the girl girls lacrosse, you okay with your son going out there and beating all the girls? Because it's happening all over the place, you know?
It's time,
Let me know
thank
how
you.
that works out.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dorota Bashti. I'm from Sparta. I want to first and foremost thank to all the BOE members who work hard to ensure our kids' educational needs are met while our parental rights are honored. Secondly, I want to speak for the most vulnerable here and in our schools and in our society, the detransitioners. There are thousands of detransitioner kids who are going through hell because nobody wants to listen to them. I want you to look up Chloe Call, Laura Becker, Luca Hain, Estela Suarez Hamilton, Brian Wagner, the Shapeshifter, and thousands upon thousands of kids who transition and now are detransitioning. And guess what? Their parents are the ones sitting in the hospitals with their children who cut their wrists after they butchered their genitals, after they removed their breasts prematurely. This is no joke. I respect everybody's right, and LGBTQ community is welcomed and very protected in our schools and have been for years. I'm holding in my hand a book written by a child psychiatrist. Her name is Dr. Miriam Grossman. She is a world-renowned child psychiatrist and author. And it's a gold mine. There are statistics in here. This is really nerve-wracking. She's got statistics. She has references. She's got science in here. This book is called Lost in Transnation, a child psychiatrist guide out of the madness. It's available at our local Sparta library. So if you have a transitioning child or you just want to read it and see all the resources, there is no science behind transitioning. There is no science. This is an experiment, and it's a $1.5 billion industry trying to destroy our kids. So I ask the board to repeal that policy because all the trans children in our schools are already protected by laws. Thank you.
Real quick, before we go on, Ms. Hamilton will be the last speaker for this session.
I also want to speak. We to stand up to the online speaker.
If there's no one else signed in, we have a whole agenda to go through. We've already exceeded the time. Ms. Hamilton will be the last speaker.
There's been no rule that we have
Let him be the last one. Let him be the last one. Let him be the last one.
Chad, are you signed in? Sure, he's signed in. If you're signed in already, that's fine. I know you were signed in, then Chad will be the last speaker.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
My name's Lauren Monaco. I didn't plan anything. I didn't even know if I was going to make it tonight. I also have spoken in front of a lot of people, and I'm not nervous, but now I'm nervous. I work at Sparta High School. If anyone doesn't recognize me, I won the Educational Services Professional of the Year award last year because of my dedication to your students. I really care about your kids. I came up here because I'm sick to my stomach about what's happening, and I feel like I need to weigh in professionally and personally. As a professionally trained counselor, repealing this policy that you were thinking of repealing is dangerous. I think you should listen to the professionals. This is how kids die. And I'm saying that as a professionally trained counselor and as a member of the LGBTQ+ community myself. I don't want to be in this environment because of who I am. It's too hard for me to be in this place. Imagine how our kids feel. This is how kids die. You need to listen to the professionals. You need to listen to the people who care about your kids for no reason other than the fact that they are dedicated to the work that they do. Thank you.
Hi there, Jen Hamilton, 37 Holland Circle. I don't really want to go after that one, but I guess I'm going to come up here and say what I want to say because I sometimes feel like I'm wasting my breath, but I'm going to give it one more go. Policies are important. It is a function of this board to pass policies. But it's really, really important that they are thoughtful policies, and rescinding a policy that has been in existence without replacing it with anything is dangerous. It creates a liability for this district. It creates a liability for these kids. Think about what could go wrong with these kids. And yeah, I mean, sure, nothing could happen and eventually you'll replace it with something and maybe you'll be fine, but it's not a chance I want to take. It's not a risk I would be willing to take, and I wish that you took a little bit more time to consider this before you just jumped at the opportunity to pull it out from under the rug. There's a lot of you at this table, and I know that you could make the right decision today to leave this in place while you carefully craft something to replace it that's going to compromise and meet the needs of everybody. It's really hard to talk with that adorable baby right there. Congratulations, Lauren. And the last thing I want to say is when I walked into this room, I took a moment and I looked around at all of these people who are here, a good chunk of them who have educated my children in this district. And so I just want to say, as a parent, as a mother to 2 teenagers in the district, I sure hope that my kids feel like they can come to me with anything. I think I create an environment in our house where they can. But if they can't, or they don't feel like they can, I am so grateful to the faces behind me that have made a space that my kids feel comfortable sharing with them. And so thank you. Thank you to you. That's all I have.
Questions that other lady asked, maybe we should come back to her, unless you have the answer.
Chad Wood, Sparta, New Jersey, 1524. I particularly don't like to craft speeches. I like to listen to what the audience has to say and form my opinion, and I took some notes tonight. I think the idea of repealing 1524 is such a scary idea, and Juliet talked about how students are speaking tonight, but I really wanted to throw my hat into the ring regarding student perspective, especially students who are transgender or are trying to move on that path forward. And it's just really scary about the students that you're going to be affecting. At the last meeting, a student spoke about how when students hear about, let me rephrase, 2 out of 3 transgender or LGBTQ plus students who hear about local policy are sad most of or all of the time. 2 out of 3. That's a majority. A majority of LGBTQ students are sad, depressed, synonyms, I apologize, I'm really emotional. 2 out of 3, 2/3, 66% of students are being harmed today. Today, as we speak, as they are hearing about local legislation that is changing or will be changing or may has already been changed, I'm convinced that your minds have not been changed and nothing is going to change here tonight. And that scares me tremendously. To talk about how teachers are hiding things from parents and talk about parents' rights, I have to ask, what are the students' rights? Have you ever considered about the emotional and psychological damage that is going to be inflicted upon your children when secrets that they've entrusted into adults are going to be ripped right out of their grasp and it's going to be told to the parents? I can speak that even with my parents' relationships, when my parents find out things that I didn't want them to, or I hear them telling other parents things that I don't want them to know, it hurts me, it hurts my feelings. But if it was something as deep, or when they're under the belief that they're transgender and they identify that way and that's the way they feel, and you take that choice away from teachers and you take that choice away from students, you inspire fear for them to talk to people. And
1 minute.
That's all you want from students. And I just would like to make the clarification that when a student confides in a teacher and is getting support from that teacher, that support does not mean that the teacher is providing a transition service for your children. It's simple supports and simple and ear to listen, and a teacher who has been in contact with more students than any of you combined has the experience to talk to a student to the capacities that they feel. And I don't like to talk about the idea of self-harm because it is triggering, but I do think Ms. Monaco is right that things like this are absolutely killing children. And I do know people, and I do know students that have participated in self-harm as a result of sexual identity crises or not feeling comfortable in their environment. And it is a super scary reality that is not going to happen post-transgender surgery, but long before, when they're still trying to discover their identity. Thank you.
Make a motion to close. Thank you.
Public session's closed at this time.
You can make a motion if you'd like
I
to
am.
silence someone who lives here, just was 5 minutes, but you smugly just sat in your chairs in circles, not listening to people.
Yes, I did, thank you.
I know you did,
Could I
sir.
get a
So
motion
can
to
we have
close
one
Motion.
talk? One person?
Sir, there's going to be another opportunity for public comment.
I understand. If you can make a motion if you
All in
want,
favor?
go ahead, vote
I
to
don't make
silence us.
motions.
Thank you.
Sorry, but if he gets to speak, then I can. He's not a bigot.
Okay.
I will just go back and address Ms. Scott's questions when it comes to the many policies that are on tonight's agenda. First of all, I won't be able to address them specifically this evening in front of people, but I can tell you that those policies were all from a Strauss-Esme alert, and those policies were triggered by either statutory changes or by mandatory language changes, and they're all in compliance with what Strauss-Esme gives us, our policy provider. So I would be more than happy, Ms. Scott, to answer these questions and to provide you with the Strauss-Esme explanations and also the red line versions of those policy revisions.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We get a motion to move item number 15, personnel and policy, 15.1 to 15.30. 15.30, sorry. Motion. Thank you, Walter. Second?
Second.
And discussion.
I'd like to discuss, I heard everybody in the room, and I don't think we're all that far apart when it comes to when it comes to caring and loving on the LGBTQ community. This policy is not forcing anyone to be outed. It specifically addressed transgender students. We will continue to follow the state guidance and the laws set forth. They're statutorily set to protect this community because they deserve the protections that already exist. It is now a situation where we are a policy-making body, and we are not allowed to change one sentence in a policy without being sued by the Attorney General. So it is a lot bigger than it looks like if you've read the actual policy. These decisions that happen need to happen with parental support. We can all agree that parents need to be involved, and we all love the entire community here in Sparta. These students are struggling emotionally, and the way the policy is currently written, it is written so that it dissuades our staff from involving parents who may need to be involved. There are very serious repercussions for socially transitioning students without parental involvement. And if parents are a threat to students, and if people feel that they can't go to their own parents and be safe emotionally, physically, there are already measures in place for that. Child Protective Services can and should be called in those circumstances to help. These policies are important.
We sat up here for an hour and a half listening to public session and did not make one comment.
Get 'em out.
We didn't make one comment. If we're going to speak up here, please show some respect. Thank you.
Okay. So, and I'm sitting up here as a parent, as a neighbor, as a friend, as a human being. And I can assure you that nothing that happens at this table is done with malicious intent. Whether you'd like to believe that or not is up to you. I'm sitting here, and I do appreciate Mr. Carroll offering to speak out in the P flag, and I will be attending the next meeting, and I will be reaching out, because I do believe that there is more in common between everyone in this audience than people realize. It's one little sentence that is getting everyone involved in this mess in the state. One sentence that a policy-making body is not allowed to change because the Attorney General decided that. It is not a mandated policy. The statutes in the policy are mandated. They will be honored. These students will be protected, loved, and respected by everyone in this community. And if that's not happening, there are measures in place for that as well.
I would also like to speak. I've been misquoted twice now in public, and I find it very upsetting because no one knows my personal ties or experience to the LGBTQ community, nor anyone else that sits up here. How dare you make assumptions? I said that if standing up for your children burns a bridge, I have matches and we ride at dawn. I said nothing about a fire burning in my belly that is anti-LGBTQ. I have direct community members that are members of that community. How dare you?
Any other discussion? I just want to say, when I make my vote tonight, I just want it to be clear, I'm not making my vote out of hate. I'm not making my vote out of ignorance. And I assure you that the safety of the children will remain in place in the district. Just to touch on what Lee said, 90% of this district policy is covered by state law. It'll all remain and be intact. It's going to be followed.
While I wasn't here for the last meeting and the public comment, I did get an opportunity to review, and obviously we've discussed further in committee and with my colleagues. And I think one thing that came up tonight in public comment that I think is an important question that we need to look at is if we are repealing, then what are we replacing with? And I know that we have been talking about how guidelines would continue to be followed. But it is this piece that, as Lee pointed out, and as a member from another school board pointed out, that it is problematic as a policymaking body when we can't make unique exceptions to policies or make it tailored to our community. I agree with everything that was said about having thoughtful policy, and where there's concern where we don't have a policy in place to fall back upon. And this is a unique circumstance, right? Because we've never not been able to look at a policy and say, that line is problematic to individuals or to the majority of the board or to the members of the community. And how do we still assert our compassion and our care and our kindness, especially in being in a district that has such robust mental health resources that we have through Align, and our budget still continuing to continue to increase the amount of mental health planning that we have for our students and clinicians to support them. I would like to see, I think what would be helpful in this situation that may help to bridge some of the gap is that we release those guidelines that we will be following. I don't know how that works in the sense that we're not doing a first and second read as a policy, because essentially the policy does not allow us to say what I believe we are wishing to say here, that it is not about outing, it's about giving the opportunity for, if a student comes to a trusted staff member, that they can have that held in confidence, and that the staff member can figure out the best resources for that student to be able to tell their parents. And if there is a safety concern, that we are able to have people in our Align Health, that we can have Dr. Beck, Ms. Rossi, we can have members of our district help to ascertain along with the staff member, is that child in jeopardy or is that child in danger? Because as a school system, we really can't control what happens in the school. We can't control, what happens at home. We do know the staff know the students very well, sometimes better than the parents, but to leave parents out of a conversation that maybe they're not able to have is very difficult for me to hear, because if I lacked the foresight or I didn't see it in my own student, I would want someone from our school community to help me have that conversation with my student and my child. And I think we have staff that have come up and said that they are willing to do that. I see that every day in our staff, that they're willing to help in that school-home connection. But I want to express to the public that that's the concern that I have with this policy. It's just that we can't, when it says in the guidelines from the state that a school district shall accept the student's asserted gender identity, that parent consent is not required. Further, you don't have to have any requirements. It says further, a student may not meet any threshold diagnosis, treatment requirements to have his or her gender identity recognized or respected by the district, school, or school personnel. I want to make it clear that we would not be taking that away, but it's just the fact that that line about parental consent not required, we're not asking for consent. We're saying that we should be able to involve the parent and they shouldn't be left in the dark. So I know that's a long-winded way of saying this, but I think what would be helpful is for everybody to see that guidance, because ultimately we are still having acting guidelines in the school, right? Dr. Beck, you would still be instructing your administrative team, our line teams, our staff on how we are going to be moving forward. And so I either think we need to present what that is tonight, make it very clear, or I would move to table until the next meeting that we can have that clearly shared for review prior to a vote. But I am in support of having parents be involved in a safe way for our students, not in a way that would cause self-harm, but to truly have that collaboration and to teach them when they lack the skills to parent in that way.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just would like to chime in too. I think it's paramount that parents are involved in what's going on in their child's life. We are their greatest advocates. We are the ones that care the most about our children. And there is no time should parents, unless we have, it's brought up so many times that it's a dangerous situation in the household, then that is something that needs to be brought up as Ms. McMichael said, to CPS, and there's processes in place already in the school to do those things. I think everybody that showed up here tonight loves their children, cares about their children, and they want the best for their children. And they want to be involved in what's going on in their life. And they should not be separated from what's going on. It is a marginalized community, and they are under tremendous stress, and there's resources that need to be put in place. And who is going to be the best advocate for these children but their parents? You can't take that out of the equation. Parents have to be involved in what's going on with their child's life. And this is a pretty significant situation for many children. And it can be dangerous. And the parents need to be there to support them. You can't take that away. And we're not forcing people to be outed. That's not what's happening with this policy. We're not taking away the protections that are in place by law. None of that is going on. And nobody here wants that to happen. We just need to have involvement from the parents when a very serious, potentially dangerous situation for, as been said so many times, this marginalized community. We need to have the supports in place, not just outside the home. The home has to be part of that solution. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I would like to just, like what Lauren, we were saying, it is hard to sit up here and be a policy-making body and have our hands tied a lot of it by the state. Districts that did not adopt this not mandatory policy created their own in 2019, 2018, Kittatinny being one of them. And they have a lovely policy that I think does a really great job protecting the students in these groups, specifically the transgender students, because that is the name of this policy. So leaning on some of the neighboring high-performing districts would be something that I would be interested in exploring to see what they've done. I don't know if we're legally allowed to do that with the tenor in this state right now. Excuse me?
No, we don't want you to call out.
No, we weren't calling out. She said something.
Great. Now that my train of thought is completely missed.
Good.
What was I saying?
We were talking about.
Oh, Kittatinny, okay. Specifically, I think that they have a really robust policy that definitely, I think, almost goes above and beyond some of the things that are laid out in the state version in terms of helping navigate and bridge that gap between the school and the home. Like Lauren mentioned, we have a line which is recognized throughout the state as being one of the best resources and well-run programs for our students. And I think, if we were allowed to legally explore what it might look like for parents to be involved in situations where students may not feel endangered, but maybe they need a little bit of help to bridge that gap, that would be something that I think would be worth exploring and discussing moving forward.
Thank you.
If I could just, because the discussion has now shifted to how it would be implemented in the schools, I think it would be appropriate for me to talk. So if the policy is repealed this evening on the second reading, then it is repealed this evening, then there's an absence of a policy. So there's no policy telling us what to do or what not to do. So initially, I would say that the absence of the policy does not necessarily initiate a mandatory reporting mechanism because there's no policy stating that we have to report either. What I would say is the same message that I delivered last month. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that I think it would be not only a good idea, but essential to come up with a policy that would outline what this would look like once repealed. Essential. In the meantime, if it were to be repealed tonight and no policy replace it tonight, in the interim, we would continue to make decisions as we always have in the best interest of children while following the Department of Education and the NJSIAA comprehensive guidance and keeping the best interest and the safety of our students first and foremost in the absence of a policy stating either way. So that would look like we need to consult with our professionals in-house and determine if it would be safe to determine whether to notify the parents. If and when that occurs, that's when we would do it. And if it would not be, we would take the other measures that you folks have mentioned as well. But I would like to definitely pursue having something replace this if it is the decision to repeal it.
Thank you, Matt. If there's no further discussion, I'd like to get a motion
There's a motion already on the table.
to, oh, yes, there is, forgot, my bad. Yeah, are you doing? No. Did you want to do something with 2.6?
The current motion is discussion.
No, the
So we
current
have to
motion
close
is
the
to
mo-
pass the entire personnel agenda.
Right,
Okay.
including all the policies.
So I would like to make a motion to table to allow for further, to further discussion and the ability to show a repeal and replace, or the exact guidelines that we will be following for the item 15.24, policy number 5756, transgender students. I'd also like to table item 15.26, regulation 5440, honoring student achievement. Mr. Rossi and I were working on a few changes on it, and there's just a few items that need to be adjusted to reflect our honor roll names and a few bullet points. But otherwise, I'm comfortable moving forward with the others.
So motion to table needs a second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I second 15.26 being tabled.
Well, then Wendy seconded both of them, I think, right?
Both
Yeah,
of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just need discussion.
Any discussion?
I understand the motion that you put up there, but I think, as was mentioned before, the state's kind of handcuffed us at this point. And we would be incurring serious legal costs, as Attorney General Platkin has pretty much shown everybody, that our hands are kind of tied. And I think in absence of being able to do anything, we need to get rid of this policy so that we can have parental involvement. It has to, it cannot be a successful situation in that child's life with their parent being kept out of what's going on there. And again, I do not want this to be, oh, I'm trying to hurt trans children. I'm not trying to do that. I think the best protections are given by the parents in coordination with the school and mental health professionals if those are required. It's a difficult situation that these students are in, and it should be tackled from the family. I think we need to get this policy rescinded. Thank you.
I just
On
wanted
the- go
some
on.
clarification, because when I read the committee minutes and then the final agenda, I did ask what was going to be put in place if the policy was completely rescinded. I was told that protocol was going to be discussed, and I was under the impression that a protocol was going to be put in place in the meantime. Am I misunderstanding?
I was under the same impression.
Protocol is what Dr. Beck just discussed going forward, the steps going forward.
So, but nothing protocol-wise has been decided as of yet?
It's what he just stated.
Okay, so there will be protocol in place should this policy be rescinded tonight?
We're going to be following the steps of this.
Right, so
superintendent.
what Dr. Beck said, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like it still needed to be discussed,
Discuss with who?
that the protocol still needed to be discussed, that there wasn't anything in place, that there's not going to be anything there.
Yeah, so the parts of the policy that are statute, obviously, are going to remain in place. I really think that is the parental notification piece that is what is in question right now. And as I stated before, the repealing of this policy doesn't necessarily trigger a mandatory reporting because there's no policy that says we have to report it either. So the protocol will be, in the meantime, and in the absence of additional or replacement policy, the protocol will be case by case, decisions made in the best interest of students, if and when determined with our professionals that it would be safe and the students are ready to tell their parents. That's what we would do. But there's no policy stating now, with the repealing of this, there's no policy stating that we shall not, and there is no policy stating that we shall. So I want to make sure we make the decisions in the best interests of our students. And secondary to that, that our district and our administrators that make these decisions are covered as well for liability purposes.
Okay, Joanne, can I get a roll call on the 2 items that are tabled?
Ms. Collier?
Before we close the discussion, Mr. Morris, so then what would truly our option be? Like, if piggybacking on the point of what Ms. Pitzer brought up too, is that, and what you just said is what protocol we followed, and maybe this is a question for you, Mark, is how would we, in the absence of policy that we are following guidelines, is that something we can put within policy? I mean, this policy is non-mandatory. And this is where it gets very confusing. But we need something to be followed. So like what I was suggesting when I'm saying tabling is having this, still something written, still something that like the public could see, that our staff and students can see, that says this is really covered by case law. And we are still continuing this, but we're allowing that discussion to happen.
I think if it's something in writing, that would be a policy or a regulation. I think what I heard Dr. Beck say is that in these situations, we're going to look to DOE guidance documents. We're going to look to the NJSIA guidance and protocols regarding athletics. We're going to look at state statutes and regulations, which do provide a framework on how to address these important issues. So not everything needs to be codified in a policy. There's many laws for which there aren't necessarily policies, and it's up to this board to decide whether it's better to have something in place vis-a-vis a comprehensive policy, or whether we're just going to tell the staff that DOE guidance and other guidance documents and laws are going to be the controlling factor. Of course, the laws have to be followed. The guidance documents are just that. They're guidance documents. They're instructive.
Right. Thank you.
Can we get a roll call, Joanne? On the tabling of 1524 and 1526.
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Can you come back to me, please?
Mr. Knapp?
No to 15.24, yes to 15.26.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes to 15.26, no to 15.24.
Ms. Pitzer?
Yes to 15.26, no to 15.24.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes to both.
Mr. Morris?
No to 1524, yes to 1526.
Can you just read that back? What was the vote?
So, yes. Ms. Collier was yes. Mr. Knapp was no to 15.24,
I
yes.
just got the number. What was the total yes and total no?
2, just 2 yeses for 24 and all yeses for 26.
Okay.
Motion 1524 does not pass. 1526 passes. So now could I get a motion to vote through 1501 to 1525, then 1527 to 1530?
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Walter, Joanne. Discussion, we already had. All in, Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes to all, but I do vote to have further discussion on 15.24, so no to that.
Mr. Knapp?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
I'm sorry, I'm just consulting my vote. Okay, sorry, yes.
Ms. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
No to 15.24, yes to everything else.
Motion carries.
Do you want my vote or no?
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
It carried without you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what did you mean by?
Okay, can I get a motion on number 16, curriculum and instruction, 16.1 to 16.9?
That was only 4 votes for 15.24, not 5. Don't we need?
It didn't need 5 votes. Personnel does. It's a simple majority.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, can I get a motion on 16.1, 16.9?
Motion.
Okay, second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Mr. Knapp?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Has left the building.
She left.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Can I get a motion on item number 17, finance, 17.1 to 17.10?
Motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Leanne. Discussion. Roll call, Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Mr. Knapp?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Can I get a motion on item 18, operations, 18.1 to 18.3?
Motion.
Thank you, Leanne. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Mr. Knapp?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Does anybody have old business? New business? Okay. Moving on to public comment number 2. The board uses the second public comment period to invite comments on all matters pertaining to the school district. Please state your name, municipality, and group affiliation if appropriate for the record. Each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. Once you have had your allotted 3 minutes to speak, you will not be permitted to speak again. All statements should be directed to me as presiding officer. The board or administration may or not be making comments after the conclusion of participation.
May I?
Wow, you're first.
I know, I accidentally almost knocked over our
Shocking.
security guard to be first in line instead of last, so that you didn't
I know.
get mad at me.
You can start.
That doesn't
whenever.
count my 3 minutes. Don't start the
No,
clock.
yeah, I didn't start it.
And my precursor is, while I'm going to say the names of board members at the table, I am only addressing you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Jennifer Hamilton, 37 Holland Circle. So, listen, first of all, I want to say I really appreciated the discussion that took place at the table, at the very least, even though I don't agree with the outcome of the vote personally. I do appreciate the procedural steps that you took to inform us of why you were voting the way you did, so thank you at least for that part. Lee, this is to Kurt, but I have to ask, if you believe that what needs to happen is to create an option for more parental involvement, why wasn't that amendment proposed instead of just rescinding this policy outright? You spoke about Kittatinny's policy as being a model that we could look to. Why didn't we propose a model or an amendment to the policy rather than rescinding it? Kurt, I appreciated that you say that 90% is covered by state law, but that's not the part we need the policy for. The 90% that's covered is covered. The part we actually need the policy for is the 10% where, maybe there's something that's not covered by the law and it leaves a giant question mark. Lauren, I just wanted to say there's nothing that says that you can't outright
I'm sorry, there's nothing saying that you outright cannot involve the parents in the policy that exists, as far as I'm aware, just that it's not mandated. And so if what we're looking to do is say that, like, you know, we want to have communication, that's what the policy should say. But mandating it is not really a step that I think is in the right direction. Dr. Beck, these are just like my quick notes, so I'm sorry if I'm messing things up. In the absence of a policy, it would be in the discretion of each individual teacher, right? So you're talking about communication, and we would decide in the best interest of the student, but it kind of creates a scenario where you're putting liability on your teachers, because now they have to make the decision. Am I going to be a reporter? Am I not going to be a reporter? We have mandated reporting for certain scenarios when a student's obviously in a harmful situation, and then there are scenarios that, you know, you don't have to tell mom, but this leaves a giant question mark. And then my final comment is just related to what Mr. Knapp was saying. And, you know, the questions that arose from Mr. Knapp, I didn't mean to point, sorry, that arose from Mr. Knapp and Ms. Pitzer's discussion about what would happen if we rescinded the policy, and talking about how we think that parents need to be informed immediately, and that's what happens here, is exactly why this policy needed to be amended and not rescinded, because there are too many questions. Even the 6 people who were sitting at this table don't know the answers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Beck, Kurt Morris, board members, thank you. My name is Andrew Bayless, and I am the Vice President of the Sparta Education Association. Let me first acknowledge that it has been just over a year since the passing of our beloved colleague, Louise Shepard. Her legacy of compassion, inclusion, and dedication still live on in Helen Morgan School, and we are all grateful for the time that we had with her. As our second month comes to an end, our members have spent a great deal of time getting to know their students, accommodating their needs, and devising plans so that every student can succeed. Through this process, we build trusting relationships with our students. We provide a learning environment where all students are welcome and feel safe. For without that, the idea of comprehending any subject matter will be moot. In order to achieve growth, communication is a must. And I just want to recap for the board the myriad ways in which our members communicate with families every day. Every teacher has a website or Google Classroom that specifies the expectations for class. Some educators use Dojo or Remind apps to share and receive messages. All use email. And our elementary educators have conferences for individualized discussions, and all 5 buildings have back-to-school nights. Some buildings have separate grade level evenings, and many of our members volunteer to attend multiple events to ensure that they can meet as many parents as possible. Parents have constant access to student achievement through Parent Portal, and we attend countless family-inclusive meetings. I cannot think of a better example of transparency and communication than the communication between SEA professionals and families. Student safety is a priority and always will be, but equal to that, we have a job to do, which is to provide the best education, resources, instruction, and support to the students of the Sparta Township Public Schools. We have a brand new orchestra teacher who in just 2 weeks prepared a student performance at back-to-school night at the high school. We have members who have been invited to present at state conferences, including the NJEA Convention, which is the largest professional development conference for educators in the nation. We have members who have been selected to serve on national anti-censorship committees. We have members who volunteer with service organizations around the state. We have so many members pursuing graduate degrees to learn more about their subject or practice so that they can be better for their students. This district has 400 dedicated association professionals who come to work each day with a shared goal to hone their expertise and parlay the relationships they build with students and families. So at the end of the day, the end of the year, at graduation, all students can reflect upon their time in Sparta schools, regardless of who they are, GPA, or what's next on their journey, and say that their Sparta experience prepared them. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Angela DeLucia, the proud president of the Sparta Education Association, representing 400 certificated faculty, secretaries, paras, security guards, and IT staff members. We believe our schools, students, and staff deserve to be a part of a district that follows best practices, adheres to the law and statutes governing our public schools, and more notably, has a Board of Education who shares those sentiments. However, through its various actions, members of this Board of Education have shown they do not support all stakeholders. Their decisions have put our district and members at legal risk and increased the probability the board having to spend money on unnecessary litigation fees, money our district cannot afford to spend without sacrificing more staff, programs, and resources. These actions include, but are not limited to, attempts to remove gender and sexuality from the curriculum, removing books that reference LGBTQ+ community despite committee recommendations otherwise, seeking to approve all aspects of implementation of curriculum, repealing policy with the intent of forcing teachers to out students to their parents before they are ready, allowing members of the public in their board meetings to describe staff members as pornographers, pedophiles, and groomers, making motions to mandate all health and PE teachers share daily lesson plans with parents, and most importantly, propagating politics despite the board's oath to nonpartisanship. With these actions comes an overwhelming feeling amongst SEA members that these board members are overstepping their authority to push their political agenda on the staff and this community to the detriment of our students. It is our collective role to protect all students and to make them feel welcome when they come to school, and it's becoming increasingly harder to do so after every single board meeting. Therefore, for these reasons and more, by an overwhelming majority of the 400 members of the Sparta Education Association, we declare a formal vote of no confidence in Sparta Board of Education members responsible, Mr. Knapp, Ms. Keeling, Ms. Pitzer, Ms. McMichael, and Mr. Morris. We understand the severity of this decision and did not arrive at it hastily. However, as an elected board representative in public education, you have a sworn responsibility to represent all students and uphold state mandates and district policies. And if you cannot separate your personal and political beliefs, we ask you to rethink your role in this position.
Can we get the next speaker, please?
Good evening. Good evening, Angie Hawthorne, Sparta, New Jersey. I'm very proud of the staff for doing one of the hardest things an educator can do. I wasn't expecting that, so sorry. I just want them to know that before they leave tonight, they hear that there are parents who trust them, very much so. I have a daughter right now in first grade. She is crossing gender lines by playing flag football with all boys, and she kills it every week. Second, when my son was at Helen Morgan, it wasn't easy for him. There were some positive HIB cases that were towards him, but he had people in his corner there. And through a line, everything he confided in the adults in that building were confidential. And many people in this room know that my son and my daughter and I have extremely close relationships. My kids are wonderful people, good humans, and leaders everywhere they go. I was thankful, and still am, that those adults were there for my son when I couldn't be, when I was working for other children an hour away. I teach both of my children that no matter where you go, you need to find at least 3 adults that are not mommy and daddy
that you can trust. Find 3. He had Miss Shepherd, he had Miss Spence, he had Mr. Lehman, he had Miss LeBar,
1 minute.
and many others in that building. He had way more than 3. And I'm so thankful to them. And now my daughter, her rights are being taken away because when she finds those 3 adults in her building that she trusts, and I've told her she can go to and say things that maybe she's not comfortable yet saying to mommy and daddy, she can say to them. It's not fair because you don't speak for all of our children. You don't speak for all of us parents. And what you're doing isn't with the majority of parents. And it's unfair. I did want to read really quickly. My son wrote something.
You got 15 seconds.
Okay. Can we just talk for a second about people disrespecting Mr. Lehman last month? They made a terrible video about him. I know I'm only 11, but at least I know that it is ridiculous behavior.
That's time. Thank you.
I'll send it to you.
Good evening. My name's Joanne Scally, Seneca Lake Road, Sparta, New Jersey. I'm a proud mom of 3 children, 10 grandchildren. 3 of my children graduated the district. And I want to thank you for passing 1524 because I taught my kids always to come to me, to be open. I have 10 grandchildren. They come to me. One's in the Navy. He still confides in me. And that's what I want. The parents have to be the lifeline there. Without that, what happens? We teach them, don't be afraid to come to us. Then all of a sudden we're telling them, well, the teachers can't come to you, and you're okay with that. But what happens if they get molested by a teacher or molested? They're afraid to come to us? There was 4 teachers this past week were just arrested. So yes, it does happen. Maybe it doesn't happen here, but it did happen this past week, 4 educators that we're supposed to trust. So we do trust our parents, and I hate how everyone here says that we're being hateful because we don't believe in what they believe in. We're harming our children. Our kids are going to kill themselves. Their kids are going to be homeless. I have good friends in the 70s that came out to their parents, and that was very early. And they weren't shamed. They weren't kicked out. And they're a very Christian family. My great friend that I grew up with, my cousin, he came out to my aunt and uncle, and I said, oh, this is not going to be good. It was fine. So parents aren't, I'm not hateful. I'm not hateful against all these sides, but I am against what they project for all of us. And we can all agree to disagree, but what we can't do is be disrespectful. And everyone up here was sat so nice and calmly. We're elected officials here. They sit here. We elected them. Yet we have heckling and name-calling. And if we don't agree, we're a bigot. If we don't think we're homophobic, we're all called all different names because we do not agree with what they said. That is wrong. Definitely wrong.
1 minute.
I'm just so happy that I have 3 children. They're good people, 10 great-grandchildren that are good people, aging from 3 to 21. The Navy one, he confides in me, still calls, lets me know what's happening, and that's the way it should be. They should feel welcome and shouldn't have it. If I was in school, my teacher said, oh, you could tell me anything, I won't tell, or you could do whatever, I probably would have did a lot of things that I would have regretted later on in life. Because I said, well, that was a bad decision, but too late, I already did it. But I just want to thank you for all the crap you take, and you sit up there and be nice while everyone heckles. And I've never been to a Board of Ed meeting, but I had to come after seeing the videos and seeing the heckling. And it is one-sided, the heckling, because I'll see the speakers that are speaking for it get heckled, and the ones that are speaking against it, no one heckles. So please stop the heckling and please be respectful. And maybe we should have class in. Let's go!
Thank you. That's time. Thank you.
Can you please stay seated, please?
Hi, my name's Debbie Gilmore, and I'm a resident of Sparta. And I'm here first. I just want to tell you thank you. Thank you for all the time that all of you spend that you don't get paid for, and I mean, what a big headache. I would never, ever be able to do what you guys do. And I also just want to say, back when, I guess when I was younger, when I was a teenager, the schools became very strict about no secrets being kept because people were hiding that they were being abused at home. And those secrets being kept were preventing kids from getting the help that was needed. And thankfully, some some educators would actually realize what was going on, and they'd be able to help. I mean, the nuns, they were right on top of us. But I mean, you know, you weren't allowed to, I mean, our parents would tell us, whatever happens in this house stays in this house. You don't ever say anything. But the educators would say, you know, you need to share. And I think every time I've ever spoken here, I've always said that every single kid in this district should be treated with love and respect and feel comfortable in their skin, feel comfortable with their peers. But a parent has rights to know things. There are things that parents need to be involved in. And I thank you for passing that. We have to protect our kids. And you look at my one cousin who I was very, very close to, who was gay, committed suicide. And I mean, everybody knew. I went to his senior prom with him, even though I was married and had 2 kids. I just told him not to let anybody know how old I was. But I mean, I realized that that does happen. So parents need to be involved. They need to be able to be there. And you know what? You think that, oh, they're going to hate their kid. They're going to throw their kids out. That's not what happens. We love our kids. And we're going to stand behind our kids. No matter what is going on, we're going to stand behind them. I mean, if they're committing a crime, of course we're not going to stand behind that. But I mean, we're going to stand behind them if they come out. But for one side to constantly, you know, talk about no confidence in the board now, this is the same people that are run by the teachers union, who is a communist union. And, yep. And if you read the book School of Darkness, it was started and it was a front for communism.
Scott Knowles, Sparta.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I wanted to talk about what I see as a disturbing trend. Sussex County has one of the highest property tax rates in the United States. 19th out of 3,143 counties, and Sparta has some of the highest property taxes in Sussex County. That's okay. We knew that when we moved here 12 years ago. That was a price we chose to pay, largely because of the quality of the schools and the teachers. Here's the thing. I'm paying the taxes. I'm paying the taxes to pay the teachers, to pay the librarians, to pay the administrators to do their jobs. But this board is saying, yes, you have to pay the taxes and pay more. But sex ed, you're on your own. The library, we the board decide what's on the shelves, not our award-winning librarians with master's degrees and years of experience. This board is actively trying to position itself as advocates of parents' rights, a position that is complete nonsense. When the board stands against the state to defy policies designed to protect our most vulnerable kids, that is not an exercise in parents' rights. When this board restricts access to books that do not support parents' rights, it denies them. Parents in Sparta have long had the right to control their child's access to certain material and to take them out of sex ed classes. This board is endorsing the will of a bigoted minority, demanding that the district ban any books they decide are controversial. against the counsel of our educators, this board is actively and aggressively stealing the rights of the majority who want their children to have access to a complete education and a 21st century reading list. Define policy, book bans, forcing parents to teach instead of our award-winning teachers, forcing out our best teachers. This board is doing everything it can to undermine public education instead of support it. I would love to come to these meetings and talk about how to enrich the educational experience for our kids, how to increase compensation for our teachers. But there's so much positive work that we could do. Instead, I have to use my 3 minutes to get up here and defend our kids from the Board of Education. Please stop undermining my child's education. Stop attacking my rights as a parent. Stop wasting my money. And please stop engaging on the wrong side of every social issue.
Jennifer Grana for Woodbine Lane. I first want to appreciate Dr. Beck bringing up the obvious that if the policy gets abolished, then there's nothing. But there's never nothing, because I believe teachers will always support what's best for their students. I say that as a parent of a student in this community for over 20 years now, and little ones that are still going through it. I just wanted to also point out that Ms. Tynes, I think, mentioned that this policy has been in existence since 2017. So that's been 6 years without incident of any issue of parents' rights ever before this year. So once again, I just feel like I've come up here before to mention how the board has a tendency to focus on things that are not broken. I appreciate the idea of offering up the guidelines that you guys have to sit and you have to pore over and you have to decide on this one sentence, and do we abolish this? Would you abolish this or because we can't change it? If we abolish it, we won't get sued. You know what you could do is just leave it. You could just leave it alone, because it's been working. I don't know. If you have stories or incidents of issues where this has been a huge problem, then that would make sense, that this was broken. But this isn't something that's broken. Now, what was done tonight was done tonight. So that's very disappointing, because not only does that say that you're not really listening to what people want in the community and you're not listening to your staff, but that you basically just don't trust the staff, because the staff has been operating under that policy without incident for 6 years since its inception. But now this year, for some reason, you decided that parents aren't involved enough, which doesn't seem logical to me. So if upholding the Sparta mission statement, upholding the code of ethics, aligning with the core values doesn't sit with you as board members, that doesn't make any sense. It's great that you're a policy-making committee, because you are, thank you. But when the policy is fine, I just don't understand why you're picking apart at all. And it would be amazing to come to meetings and talk more about solving the overcrowding population situation at Alpine and the construction. That sounds very exciting. And talking about test scores even. That's great. That's all directly involved in what's going on day to day. But we've spent 5,000 hours here tonight talking about one policy that hasn't really caused a problem for 6 years. So what's done is done. Okay, great. But moving forward, when you are pulling apart policies or rewriting them, please consider whether or not they even need to be replaced or abolished at all, and consider where you could be spending your time more productively. Thank you.
No, I think it was 2000. COVID was 20 anyway. I think it was 19.
I didn't come here tonight to speak. I came here to listen. But after hearing tax and the heckling against you, all of you, I felt it my duty to say a few short words. Thank you for serving. It is a thankless job. You have been elected by a majority of the community because of your values, your beliefs, and your integrity. You cannot be sued for revoking a guideline, as you're aware. This is not a law. What you can be sued for is not notifying parents of concerns with their children. It's happening right now. Parents are suing school districts for not notifying them about such things. I want to thank you for doing the right thing.
Hello, Frank Sanchez, Summit Road, Sparta, New Jersey. Last time I was here, we were talking about the book that was being banned or taken out of the middle school, and I had brought up and said that, you know, this is what's going to happen next, right? We're going to have some bigotry moving in, and we're going to look at, of course, LGBTQ students. We're going to be lashing out against our trans students, and actually, one of our board members said, no, how dare we even think that? That's not going to happen. And that's exactly what just did. Lived here for over 20 years, proud to live in this community. I don't know, many conservatives, liberals, moderates, at the end of the day, we have different political views, but we don't hate each other. That's what I thought what Sparta was about. But what I see here, I don't know what happened when people with bigotry just didn't have shame, you know? And now they say the quiet parts out loud. And you had your vote today, and I just hope that the residents of this town have their vote in November. Over 500 of the 600 school districts have this policy, 500. Before today, only 5 voted against it, rescinded it, 5. I guess we're 6, 1%. Congratulations. That's what you just made Sparta look like. Like hateful Hanover, embarrassing, and that's sad. I expected more from many of you, my neighbors. I just hopefully we'll be able to reclaim Sparta's good name come November and bring back this policy in January.
Hi, how's everyone doing? Bob Mira, Sparta. I think pretty much everybody in this room probably knows who I am, which is fine. Some good, some bad. I just wanted to say I support what you guys do. It's obviously not easy. I've sat through several of these board meetings. I've listened online to several of them over the years. I appreciate what you do, each and every one of you. I totally agree with rescinding policy 5756. I 100% do support parental rights, and I think you touched on something very well. I don't think the gap is that large. I think 2 things could be true at once. I think 1, you could you can give parents parental rights, and also 2, have the protections in place for transgender students. I don't think it's 2 separate worlds, and I kind of feel like tonight people coming up are kind of positioning it as 2 separate worlds. I don't really see it that way, personally. Others might disagree with me, and that's fine. But I would say, moving ahead, I'm much more of a big picture, common sense type person, and I don't think we're as far apart as I think that maybe things are being positioned tonight. So with that, I just want to leave people at that, and hope people could be respectful of each other during this process, during your guys' process, and I just thank you guys so much for what you do. Thank you.
Hi, Danielle Wilkinson, East Shore Trail. How are you guys? Been here for almost 20 years. How you doing? You good? Good. Thank you for everybody who gave a lot of thought to this issue this evening and actually had a conversation with us. I really genuinely do appreciate that. I do very much so appreciate you, and I see you and I feel you, and thank you. But I'd like to leave you with one giant golden nugget, one piece for you to really think about. We talk about parents' rights, and we talk about how important it is for our parents to know. A sitting board member in a very public GOP video was aghast and appalled that her daughter asked what transgender was. Her daughter did not come up to her and say, I am transgender. She said, what is it? And she could not answer. She was on fire, and she began her fight. So as wonderful as it is to say that the parents need to be involved, this parent was given an opportunity to have a conversation with her child and did not. She was appalled that her child asked a question. Thank you.
Caitlin Gagnon, Summit Road. Really had no intentions of speaking tonight. I actually have new aligners in because I was hoping that that would stop me. So if one goes flying or I spit, just deal with it. A few things. So let's talk about how much the process is broken here. We have 2 student representatives for the second year in a row that have to get up and come speak at public comment to tell you how they feel. I think that's abysmal, and I said it when Chad Wood was the student representative. I still think it's abysmal, and I'm sorry they do that to you guys. Number two, the president of this board allowed members outside of this community to come first and speak first before censoring and stopping Sparta residents. That is not how this should go. I'm not saying it was deliberate, but at the end of the day, Mr. Sanchez was not allowed to speak during public comment number 1, but several people from Hanover who were clearly invited by New Jersey schools managed to have their thoughts shared. And in some cases talk about, I don't know, chemical castration as if that has something to do with your roles. Third thing, that's wonderful. Thank you for wearing red. Third thing, you just had your SCA, yes sir, you just had your SCA president announce to you a vote of no confidence in 5 of you from the majority of your teachers and staff. Does that not resonate? Do you truly not care? Does it matter that little to you? Do you have that little respect? Look at this room. It's packed. It's packed with parents. And you know what? Some of us get emotional and say, wow, or oh my gosh, or how could you? It happens. But you know what we don't do? We don't walk by one another and call each other effing losers, like I had happened to me 2 meetings ago, but not a word of how appalled anyone was. I don't have, very relevant. I don't have anyone, I understand. I'm speaking to the hypocrisy of this. The point is, the people that are offended by blatant or veiled homophobia have every right to be, because you're trampling students' and parents' rights in the most ironic twist of fate. And I will say too, the Sussex GOP event was abysmal. The fact that you are accepting awards from a local partisan political group, can you imagine if that were a Democratic group? Would everyone have the right to be appalled? Because guess what? You can call me a left liberal, I'd be appalled. I would never do that because it's against your code of ethics. You should be embarrassed. And you say it's not about transgenderism. You said it yourself at the event. It was masks, then it was sex ed, then it was transgenderism. I saw a flag and it bothered me. Enough is enough. Do your job. And Sparta, if you're still listening, vote them out.
Sandy Pender, Frieden Township. In regard to your feeling that all parents need to be involved and need to know, there are some parents that should not know about their child's situation. Let's get real about the consequences of the actions of this board. One of my son's best friends in high school was gay, or is gay, but she knew she could not tell her parents because she would be homeless. She bought her time in high school until after graduation. Over the summer, she had roundabout conversations with her parents about their feelings about people being gay. She wound up telling them on the ride to drop her off to college. Not the best timing, I know, it didn't go well. She hoped that they would sit with the news and it would soften. It did not. They disowned her and she had to drop out of school after the first year because she was left literally on her own. She took a ridiculous bus and train adventure to stay with us over the summer for 10 days. I did not alert her parents that she was in town at her wishes, and she met with her sister in private. I ran into her mother in the grocery store a few weeks later. I did not mention to her that her daughter had stayed with us. She disowned her own child. She did not deserve to know. She gave up that right when she disowned her own child and kicked her out of the house for being gay. I have no regret about not saying anything to her because I felt it was my duty to protect this child. I will say it again, your actions tonight have real consequences. There are some households that are not safe, and if the parents know, that child could be out on the street, and guess whose fault that is?
Good evening, Brent Rivers, Long Valley. I've taught seniors for a long time, so I know the body language of Friday, 8th period, so I will make it quick. These are a couple of questions that I hope we can continue to have an actual conversation about. The opportunity for conversation is so important, not just to academia, but to our community, because that's what we're here to present and preserve. Questions that come from this. Do you think that this means that kids will trust parents more? They will only trust their teachers less? If this is support for the LGBTQ community, what would discrimination look like? Words are wind, so what specific actions will our students and staff know to feel that support? Where can they observe it in their relationship with the school district? Or will they continue to be gaslit and told that they will be supported by the state? When you win, who loses? How can you talk about the queer community being marginalized as if it were an essential element of being queer? Revoking these policies are the actions that marginalize our queer communities and their allies. Thank you.
Hi, Jenny Derricks, Tappan to Sparta. I have a couple questions on a different topic. The preschool funding, is that going to continue? Is it a one-time deal? How does that work? So will that be enough to support the extended programs that you're talking about, not just this year, but going forward to incorporate all students in the town, all 3 and 4-year-olds, I think you said, in the town? I had a couple of questions, Ms. Rossi, about your presentation about test scores. Math seems to be a significant issue for especially our younger children. Our English language learning students saw a significant decline from last year. Was that because of different testing structure, or is there some hole in the curriculum that we're going to be addressing? I appreciate that. There was on slide 17, which was very informative. I do appreciate having that information. 4th, 6th, and 7th grade, again, talking about math, were significantly lower this year than last, and lower across all grade levels except 8th grade in comparison to our DFGI cohort. And I just had a quick qualifying question. I think you touched on it, but it was quick. You were speaking fast to get a lot of information out quickly. Were you speaking about from year to year students? So if test results this year for 3rd graders, next year they're 4th graders, is the comparison between 3rd graders this year and 3rd graders from last year, or 3rd graders this year from 2nd graders last year? If you can, or I know 2nd graders don't get tested, but if you can follow my questioning, I appreciate that. And if you would rather me reach out another time, let me know. But thank you.
Patty Rivas, Sparta. Did not plan on speaking again, but it's really hard to listen to all these people, and I'm like sitting in my seat just trying to think, what could be so important to those of you who voted to rescind this policy tonight to make you go down that path after listening to all of these people? What could be so important? Is it winning? Like, is that what it is? It just like, it feels good to win and we want to win? Is it appeasing your GOP buddies? The free dinner at the awards ceremony? I don't know. I mean, it feels like it has to be more personal. And the only thing I can think of is that you're so deeply fearful that your kids are gay and you don't know what to do with that. Because it has to be personal, right? Because we're all sitting here saying, we don't need teachers, or we don't need to.
You're talking to me, not her.
Okay, sorry. Sometimes I just look in different directions. Still talking to you, Kurt. It has to be that you're fearful, and maybe that's your own ignorance, and I don't blame you, because if some of you grew up in Sparta, lived here a long time, probably haven't traveled many other places, there might be a learning gap, and I know it sounds like I'm being an asshole. It does, but I feel like for the last 12 months, you guys have been assholes to all of us. I do, yep.
Ma'am.
Okay, I
enough
will
with
leave.
the profanity.
You're done.
Enough with the
Listen
profanity.
to the resources.
At this, I'm going to stop you now.
Educate yourselves.
I'm going to stop you now.
That's it.
Educate
You
yourselves.
can have a seat. Educate yourself and have a seat. Thank you.
Good.
Good evening, Dana Dumpert, Sparta. I'm going to change topics, although I would like to thank each and every one of you up here. This past week, I read an article in Tap Into regarding many expenses that have allegedly cost our district significantly. So I wanted to ask and clarify the validity of these claims. First, it was stated that our district, and therefore our taxpayers, have paid, quote, thousands upon thousands of dollars for settlement agreements where teachers have been let go. Mr. Morris, can you please clarify this? Second, this article alleged that inflation is not really the reason for increased cost and a need to raise taxes this past year. It was claimed that our Board of Ed is, quote, writing checks to all the wrong people in the wrong places. I was at your budget presentation, Dr. Beck, and I saw very clearly how transportation costs increased 19%, and employee benefit costs increased over 14%, just to name a few. I don't need my background in accounting to see that inflation truly is the reason for the tremendous increase in these vital costs. But please help me understand, Dr. Beck, what checks are we writing that weigh more heavily into our budget than things such as increased costs of transportation and employee benefits? And finally, this article claims that the Sparta School District, quote, projected to spend over $475,000 on dozens of overload stipends. My question is, again, Mr. Morris, can you please explain why these overload stipends are so high? In my experience as a supervisor in a school district, I'm aware that using overload stipends is often a cost-saving strategy to fill leave replacement positions. Additionally, and in stark contrast to what this article claimed, I know that when teachers are willing to take on additional periods of teaching, there is more consistency for our students, since many times the additional class that a teacher is taking on is one that they are currently teaching. This means that our students are being taught by teachers who are already well-versed in the subject, the instruction of the subject, and our Sparta classrooms. When I taught middle school and high school math, I recall many teachers being more comfortable leaving their students with a trusted colleague. To me, overload stipends seem like a win-win in many cases. The district is not responsible for the additional cost of ensuring a teacher. Other teachers do not have to mentor a new teacher in the middle of the year, and a Sparta teacher is given an opportunity to make additional salary during their school day. The effort to cause hysteria on an expense like overload stipends seems futile and unnecessary. So if you could please address those 3 points, I would appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Ryan Dumpert, Sparta. I'm also going to change topics. Let's talk hypothetical here. Let's say that the people of Sparta didn't learn their lesson after voting for the no mega warehouse liberals, and they vote in the stop raising taxes slate. So now it's next budget cycle, and you present a budget that has a tax increase in it. Not 5.8, because we understand why that happened, but let's say it was just the average 2% increase. And they scream at you to stop raising taxes, because that's what their slogan is. And they demand a 0% increase. Seriously, would you be willing to freeze teachers' salaries and not give them their agreed 2.8% in order to do that? Would you be willing to cut non-tenured teachers? Would you be willing? God, man. For those at home, the hecklers are making comments like usual. Would you be willing to cut non-tenured teachers? Would you be willing to cut, say, transportation for families that live within 2 miles of the school in order to fund health benefits for teachers? Would you be willing, ready? Would you be willing to fire Mark Zittimer and then go out for bid for a new attorney, which will likely end up being Mark Zittimer, considering his firm just won the lowest bid in a neighboring school? And Dr. Beck, would you be willing to stop moving forward and solving our overcrowding problems at Alpine, also that we can stop raising taxes? But wait, they didn't mean for you to stop raising taxes. That would completely defund Sparta schools. What they meant was for you to stop raising taxes so much, but they couldn't fit that on their signs. Obviously, most of this is rhetorical. I don't expect you to answer all of these questions, but I would love for you to answer some. But I want to sincerely thank you for taking the time to talk to me and keeping up with your promise to the people of Sparta. I reached out to ask you questions. You took time and explained every single question that I had. And I encourage every single person in Sparta, if they have a question, to ask Dr. Beck. Thank you.
Before you go, I'm going to cut it off at the gentleman with the gray shirt, right there. You're last. Yeah, you're good.
He's from Sparta.
I don't care if he's from East Brunswick.
Julie Knapp, Sparta. That was a pretty good speech. I guess recording the audience helped. So I just want to make sure that when you guys, the policy thing was done, whatever, when you guys address these changes that aren't really going to affect anybody, several times certain members said some things about contacting CPS if needed. And I just want to say that that is not a solution that is going to work, and we all know it. The kids that are in the homes that they can't speak to, and it's of course nobody here because our kids tell us everything, it's not our kids. But if they know that a teacher is going to call CPS on their parents, they're just not going to tell the teacher. They're going to tell an adult that maybe shouldn't be trusted. They're going to, go on the internet. They're going to tell friends. They're going to maybe be bullied. So when you're saying that you have solutions, calling CPS, come on, that's not a solution. Thank you.
Brad Prohl, Sparta. I just wanted to say thank you to the board for decisions that you made. I just hope that you now put a policy in place to continue to protect all students. Thank you, Mr. Beck, for looking at the school plans. I'm pretty excited as a resident to see what is going to come out of that, because both sides of the aisle have been trying to get a solution, so thank you for that. And great job with all the test scores. Appreciate it.
Jack Jarvis, Sparta, New Jersey.
So I grew up here all my life. I always tried to acclimate to whatever atmosphere was projected into the schools, and sadly, that wasn't the best atmosphere. I convinced myself that certain feelings I had were not okay, that I was not able to, that whatever I was feeling naturally would not connect to my peers, not even outside of. It felt like the atmosphere was the world. But some of the people who opened my eyes to that were teachers who I was able to talk to, people who I was able to confide in. And that continued to when I went off to college. There were teachers who I was able to talk to, people who did not have to disclose any of the information I said, people who were well equipped to handle any issues that I may have. And having been to Sparta High School, it is safe to say that those types of people are the staff, are the teachers that work there. And without them, without some of the things I've learned from them, I would not know who the hell I am. I would not know how to even form my own thoughts. I would probably agree with everybody, the mass majority, whatever the hell that is, because I was not comfortable thinking for myself. And isn't that what we want for children, to think for themselves, not to have these things in place? These passive aggressive, subtle things in place that guide them to one side. Because it seems like the only thing that was done here tonight was put a slight weight towards one side. And I guess we're going to see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to close public comment number 2? Seconds.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, just to comment on a few things. I'll comment on Ms. DeLucia's statement that she made. I've worked with Ms. DeLucia for several years now, negotiating contracts with their contracts, most recently with the security guards and IT. I feel her and I have a great working relationship, despite whatever outcome of this vote was. I know it wasn't the entire union that was part of this vote. The union, several union representatives didn't support us last year. I really don't expect them to support us this year. So the vote to me is pretty much a non-issue. Moving on to the other questions, I can't really speak on lawsuits about people being paid out for leaving. I can tell you, since I've been here, I don't recall paying anyone out to leave. The overloads, we've spoke on that before here. I don't know, the 475, I can't tell you if that's accurate until June, you know. Say it is 475,000 projected, roughly, which it's in the contract that we worked so hard to get for the teachers union, that they've tried to get for several years and never gotten, but now do. I want to say there's roughly over 25, just in the ballpark. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, special education teachers. So roughly over 300,000 of that is contractual through the teachers union. So the rest of it is just for leave of absence, maternity leave. You might see the number in there saying, I think it's 12,600 and change. They're not always getting 100% of that. It's partial. You got to look at the dates that they're getting paid. So if it is 475 at the end of the year, a good portion of that is going to special education teachers. That's all I got.
I scribbled a lot, so bear with me. There was a lot of comments. I find it troubling that the Sparta Education Association voted that they didn't have confidence in me and my fellow board members. This board and I have always been incredibly supportive of our teachers and continue to be so, and all the other members of the SEA. We've supported their professional development compensation packages and anything they have wanted that is within our fiscal means. I have and will always continue to support teachers. I am a teacher by trade. My entire family is teachers. They all belong to the union. I was secretary to the union when I taught. So I respect the union, and that's all. Unless Dr. Beck, would you like to go? Okay, I got ramblings. Jen Grana mentioned this policy being in place for 6 years. What I'm seeing is a revision was made to this policy in March 2019. Now, I wasn't on the board at that time. I know the policy was originally adopted in 2014. I'm pulling it up here. Again, that's not 6 years. So if we're using the metric of the March 2019, you'll remember that's right when we went into lockdown. My off year? Thanks, Brent. Anyhow, so it's not been 6 years. It's been revised in 2019. And so perhaps we don't have the data yet to support what this might look like when it's enacted. To say that it hasn't impacted anybody, I'm not sure how one person can speak on behalf of an entire school district. Currently, we do have a parent in Cherry Hill just filed lawsuit, okay, against the school district for withholding this information about students. So we want to talk about legal battles. That is definitely something to consider. And to Jen Hamilton's point, we were not allowed to make an amendment without being sued. Otherwise, we would have. And I think that covers it.
Dr. Beck? If I can just speak real quick, I'll be quick. I listened and heard a lot tonight. I was bothered by a lot, touched by a lot. I have to ask what other policies are in place that are specifically written for each and every marginalized group of students. Each race, each ethnicity, the handicapped, the neurodiverse, those from low-income families, those who are sports stars, those who are academic stars, those who don't wear the right clothes or shoes. What are the policies in place for those specific students? Because last time I checked, suicide is not selective. Neither is depression. It can happen to any student, any person, at any time. This non-mandated policy includes a sentence that withholds the information of minors from their parents and their guardians. That is what we are addressing, and as a board, we will work to ensure that proper protocols are in place to continue to protect our LGBTQ students and all students of the Sparta School District.
I'll address Ms. Derrick's question about the preschool funding. So this preschool funding that we are set to receive is part of the preschool funding that has taken place throughout the state over the past 5 years. A bunch of surrounding districts have received it over the past couple of years. I say all that to say, it looks like it has been in place for about 5 years, and there's no sign of letting up. In fact, all signs point to continued expansion, which is how a school district like us, with only 3% free and reduced lunch, was actually able to get it. So, short answer, I don't see that going anywhere. I don't see the funding going anywhere. We would hope to sustain that, but we will continue to monitor it. We're going to be responsible about it, and we're going to engage outside entities, as I stated before, and not affect our internal infrastructure as far as bringing more students into the buildings under this Pre-K Expansion Act. And then, Mr. Dumpert, I know a lot of your questions were rhetorical, so I'll just answer it very generally. I wouldn't ask the Board of Education to freeze teacher salaries. I don't think that that would be right for the teachers, first of all, and second of all, it's contractual, so we couldn't do that. And then overall, some of the questions you asked, again, mostly rhetorical, we're going to continue to make decisions in the best interest of the community and of our students, and to maintain programming that we feel is necessary when it comes to our budget. Saying that with increased prices inevitable, there's always it always becomes necessary to raise taxes. But how much we raise those taxes is what we need to have a discussion on every single year.
I'm happy to answer. I think I just have a few quick questions about the assessment data that was reviewed. So with regard to our subgroups, our ELL population, there were some strides and some actions that we took. All staff received sheltered instruction training. It was completed by the end of the summer. There were several hours worth of training to make sure that all teachers are prepared to interact with students who need certain supports in that way. And we were also very considerate with our staffing considerations this year to make sure that their placements are highly appropriate. When looking at the question about the grade levels, so I would refer you to slide 4 and 5. So when we're looking across, we're looking at how third graders did last year and how third graders did this year. So we weren't following cohorts. That's not how the slide was set up. But on page 4 or slide 4 and 5, you can actually follow a cohort. So we do that kind of analysis, but that's not on the slide. So for example, if you took third grade, you could look at what they scored level 4 and 5 in 2022. And if you look diagonally down below in fourth grade, those were the fourth graders in 2023. So you could follow for 2 cohorts since we've been back in the testing. So we do look at both. And then lastly, with regard to slide 17, that was really put there, that's all pre-pandemic data. So none of that, I think the last year we have on there is 2018-19. So it doesn't show the most current years. I know. And really that was just to show you that on average, when you're looking at our school system versus the state, so like I was just looking at 6th grade, because that was one grade you brought up, like 3 out of 5 of those years we were above and 2 we were below, but all right there within that wheelhouse of how our DFG factor groups were performing. So we look at those averages just to say that in general, things were going well and we had practices in place that were competitive. So we just need to be cautious about how much change is too much change so that we don't end up overhauling everything, including things that were working really well for us. But I'm happy to follow up if you have more questions. Thank you.
Okay, going on. Go to the order. I just want to wish, right now we're in the midst of HWS tournaments. I just want to wish all the teams that are currently involved in those tournaments the best of luck. I know Coach Jay's here. Rough loss the other night, but I'm going to say some iffy calls by the refs that didn't go your way. So short end of the stick on that, but you had a good one today. So
number 1 in the state. Okay.
yeah, so congrats to them. Should have beat Morristown, bad calls. And yeah, to everyone who's playing HWS, I believe our soccer's still there, and so good luck. Anyone else?
I'd just like to thank Dr. Beck and the administration and my fellow board members for all the hard work that we all have put in trying to find a resolution to the Alpine overcrowding and the the state of our other elementary buildings. Hopefully will be addressed soon as well, but I'm really excited about the proposed plans, and hopefully that will all be successful. And again, just thank you to all involved.
Leanne, I'm so glad you said that because, as many of you remember, the idea of doing a survey just to look at land just happened last December. That was approved. So, it's hard because we haven't been able to speak freely about a lot of this. Some of it we didn't all know until just recently, the full board, just as things were playing out and getting those plans to present to the board. But just because it didn't get spoken about at the table doesn't mean it wasn't a priority of every single person here and Dr. Beck and from a financial standpoint, of course, thank you, Joanne. So it's great to see that happening in less than a year. We're moving forward with this, so good things to come. And I'm proud to see our tax dollars at support for our students this way.
If there's no one else, I get a motion to close. Second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.